I'm going to call the meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is swearing in Susan Fadig, our new council member. But we did that earlier, actually, when we were doing the briefing to bring her up to date. So, congratulations and welcome.
Welcome.
I also would like to recognize Ted Stoddard, who has been coming to these meetings, but has also served for years for us on the elections committee. And I don't think that you nor Frank have been properly thanked by this council or committee, the village, for all of the time and work you put in. But thank you very much. Yes. So with that, we open it to the floor for comments. Any resident comments?
The meeting is being recorded.
Right, so please state your name and where you live.
Josh Bowers from Summit Avenue. Last week, the tree committee met and made a presentation to the community. And I shared with the community on some data that we had on teardowns in the village. I believe the council has received these documents. One is a colored document from 2008 with major construction and teardown history. And then a second document without my handwriting on it, which is 2008 to 14. And I'll just pass this to the council while I'm speaking.
Sure.
And since that meeting, it occurred to me this data actually may serve another helpful purpose, because it shows the pace of major construction and teardowns over roughly a 10-year period. But more importantly, since our ordinances on building were amended, which was three years ago?
2009.
Yeah, so we have a substantial amount of data now. We know that over roughly 10 years, there were 70 teardowns or major construction. About 40 of those are teardowns and about 30 are major construction. And since 2009, well, there have been a substantial number of teardowns where builders have built out to the permissible size. And some of the community believe, as well as me, that that's too large. And we know that now because home after home simply has eliminated the green space for which many of us love the village. And I would invite and encourage the council to consider now putting together a panel to review the impact of the ordinances to see how it's worked out. Because we now have the data to know exactly where the construction has taken place. Thank you.
Was there any, at the tree committee, was there any sense that there was support to reduce the size?
No, we deliberately, in fact, it was Josh who deliberately said that this should not be an avenue into building codes.
Don't steal Arthur's thunder for
right. Well, I'm not going to. There's a good opportunity to bring this up. That the tree recommendation should not be a backdoor way into getting into building codes. So we deliberately kind of pushed that off the table.
But what ought to be a back door or ought to be a front door is looking at what has happened and assessing what has happened.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, I can leave those with you, or I can take them back to my own copies, but I don't find that anyone here needs to.
Well, we have them. I can email them because you emailed them to us.
Okay.
Yeah, I can email them to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Bert, did you want to?
I'm Bert Liebman on Thornapple Street. I'm here to ask some help. I think probably everybody has been aware that the mail delivery has been somewhat of a problem in recent months. And it strikes me that one individual can do nothing about it, but this council and manager working with the councils and managers of the surrounding areas really might do something. It has been told to me by at least 3 post office personnel that 20815 is having a really bad time with delivery, and they are using temporary workers who do not know the routes. That's obviously true. let me give you some examples. There is at least one day a week where we do not receive the mail.
Period.
Yeah, that happened to us yesterday,
We
or
didn't
2
receive it
days
today.
ago. And then yesterday, we got 2 deliveries. They kind of finished up.
We went away for a few days and asked to have the mail stopped. Some of the mail was held. The rest of it was stuffed in our mailbox along with my neighbor's mail. When asked to have the stopped mail delivered, it took a month. Something that was mailed in August to remind us of an appointment in September was delivered in October. So this is really crazy. At the post office the other day, 2 people were searching for packages. If a package is delivered and you're not there, they take it away and you have no idea where it has gone, and it's exceedingly difficult. They do not answer the post office at Westfield. And the prediction is that as the holiday season comes, there will be more and more packages going astray with nobody able to find them. So, I alone can do nothing, but possibly some kind of association of 20815, or at least the villages within 20815, could apply a little pressure. Would be helpful.
Okay. When I talked to them earlier, they said, well, there are so many people on vacation that we're all sort of having to take on other people's routes, and so we're dividing them in half, and so sometimes you get your mail at 8 in the morning and sometimes you get it at 10 at night because of this.
You don't get it at all.
Or sometimes you don't get it at all.
But what's more important is if you go away, the safety is that you don't have stacks of mail hanging out at your house. But for me to have my neighbor's mail as well stacked too, it's really bad.
Right.
So
It's an interesting.
it seems like perhaps we could have some effect, but not as an individual, only as a group.
Okay, thank you. Does somebody have ideas about that they want to propose? Or
I have an idea. Lynn Welly, Oxford Street. My idea is that we invite someone from the post office to come here and listen to us and see how they can respond.
sure.
Good idea. Thank you.
My understanding is that the post office at 7 Locks Road is the branch that serves us since they closed down Arlington Road. I may be wrong on that, but the service at our house, there has been no mail days, 9:15 at night. The carrier used to do Quincy and Oxford Street. Now it seems to be split. One carrier does Quincy Street, and he's there like 11 or in the morning or noon. The different guy who's doing Oxford Street, he shows up at 5, 6, or 7 or 9 o'clock.
Right.
If he shows up.
Okay. But I think it's a good idea to follow up through the postal people.
Yes.
Josh, sure.
I had this problem 20 years ago in D.C. and solved it by writing the postmaster of non-delivery or frequently receiving my neighbor's mail. After I wrote the postmaster general, the supervisor of the post office delivered my mail for a few months.
And when was this?
20 years ago. In that office, when they tell people to do things, they really do it. And I love our congressman, and he's running for Senate, so I imagine...
I was thinking of him.
So a letter from him to the postmaster general might also get a good response.
Right. I think that's a good idea, and we know Karen, so we can.
Thank you.
Other questions? Other statements to be made?
Yes.
I forgot that I wanted to bring up at the tree committee.
Would you identify?
Sally Nairn, I'm on Turner Lane. Turner Lane, as you know, is a little narrow street with wires going down one side and not the other, and the trees under the wire are just hacked to death by the I understand the problem. I'm wondering if we could have is there going to be an ongoing tree committee, or are you all now dissolved and there's no one in charge of trees? Is there anyone, there must be someone overseeing the planting of trees. And can we make it a general policy that when trees are planted under wires, that they are planted as far back and close to the property line as possible, as far back in the right-of-way? I've done that in front of our house. I rushed out there when they were planting the tree and said, hey guys, you know, the property line is way back here, and could you plant the tree there? And the tree now is doing much better. But if you drive down Turner Lane, the trees are just hacked to death. They look awful, and the beauty of a tree is its shape. So if there is a tree, someone responsible for trees, if anyone has any objections to that, I'd like to hear it. But otherwise, can we sort of make it a general policy that the trees be planted as far back and close to the property line as possible?
Yeah. There's another issue that comes up there, and the new trees that are going in are, what's the phrase they use? Right tree, right place. So if there's wires, they're putting in smaller trees. And across the street.
That a couple of years ago, and
yeah,
it hasn't happened.
Right. For new trees, I think it is. So for at least that was my understanding of a year or so ago, okay. And that so across from the street from wires, bigger trees can go up under the wires. The new trees that are going in are smaller trees. That was the solution to dealing with the cutting under the wires.
Oh, if whoever is in charge of the future plannings could be on top of that, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is relevant to tonight because the tree supervisor for the village is Dan Gardner, a resident, and then he works with Paul Wolf, the arborist, and they just developed, it's actually in your packets, the list of proposed tree plantings for this fall.
Great.
So let's look at it specifically for your concern.
Great. Thanks. Anything else? Lynn?
Lynn Welly, Oxford Street again. Back to my favorite subject. Vehicles parked and blocking the sidewalk. There are frequent occasions when people are having work done by service vendors or contractors or whatever, and this genre of people seem to feel that no rules or laws or courtesy extends to them. They're just independent, and I'll put my vehicle where I want, leave it there as long as I want, and there's no talking any sense into them. So I would like the council to consider an inclusion in permits from the village that go to property owners when they bother to apply and get a permit, that there be something in there about vehicle parking, that their contractor vehicles will not be parked blocking the sidewalk, and that it be set up in such a way in the permit that the property owner has to initial it, and when it comes back to the village, that the contractor has to have it initialed also. There's just, these guys will get their vehicle parking, blocking the sidewalk, and they'll just leave it there. Sometimes it's all day long. And then the other thing is because it's convenient for them, they'll leave their construction trailers or sometimes their vehicles on the street overnight or sometimes over a weekend. And that's against the code in the county, it's against the code in the village. And I would like to see that also included, so that the contractors know that there are certain things they shouldn't do, that they need to show consideration for the residents, so that we can have the use of the public space the way we should have it available to us. Thank you.
No, I think, and they also park on the no parking side of the street.
Oh, yeah.
They tie up, and they are not open to the rules.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. My really, really favorite pet peeve is in front of my house on Oxford Street, on the, I guess, the east side of the street. There's a no parking sign from to the corner.
Right.
Okay? And the construction vehicles, when they show up, and it was exemplified this week when I sent you a the guy was waiting there with his big vehicle. And so these things are huge. They're extra wide. They may or may not be parked close to the curb. But when they're parked that way, and that intersection is very tight, it makes it difficult if there's another large vehicle coming by. I lived through that very, very painfully when the new home at the end of Quincy Street was constructed. These vehicles would park there waiting their turn, and then there would be other large stuff showing up, and then the backing up, the forward, the backing up, and every time they're backing up, beep, 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 beep,
Right,
beep.
right.
And so maybe under some of these signs you could say strictly enforced.
Right.
Yeah. I would like to volunteer to be a policeman and assign the authority to issue tickets. I'm sincere.
I know. Well, we can maybe talk to Montgomery County and see if that's possible.
I think it is. I know
Okay.
citizens can make arrests, but I would like to be provided with an official form that I can write out and cite these people.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? The introduction of Patrick Thomas.
Okay.
That's
All right, so as you guys know, we put out an RFP in August for a legal and ethical compliance review. And we're looking at it kind of as a wellness checkup to make sure our charter, our code of ordinances, and our policies all work together the way they're supposed to be. And if we're saying we're doing something, we are actually doing it. They also need to be working with what state law requires us to do, the parts of county law that we opt into or do not exempt ourselves from. So we put out an RFP in August. We had 5 firms respond to it, all the way from sole practitioner to large national firm. After our review process, we have selected Funk & Bolton, and Patrick will tell us a little bit more about them. They're a firm that's here, native in Maryland. They've got a large local government practice group. Patrick is a part of that group. He is an attorney for several of the local municipalities like ours. He has experience in conducting compliance reviews as well as presenting findings and making recommendations to his clients for what they should do with the conclusions of those reviews. So Patrick, you want to get up and just tell us a little bit more about you and about your approach to this work?
I can do it from here or there, whichever you prefer.
whatever you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Good. I'll use the podium when I'm here. First of all, on behalf of the firm, thank you very much for selecting us. We look forward to serving the village. Like Councilmember Cisna said, my name is Patrick Thomas. I'm an attorney with Funk & Bolton, based in the firm's Chestertown office. We also have offices in Baltimore, Annapolis, and Denton. And our local government practice is based out of the Baltimore and Chestertown offices. It's one of, if not the largest, local government practice group in the state of Maryland. We provide services to local governments across the state in various capacities, whether it's town attorney, county attorney, board of appeals, and I serve in various functions to different jurisdictions. And what we've been selected to do here for the village is to provide a comprehensive review of the village's charter and code and policies to make sure that they work with their conform to one another, as well as to state law and to county law, and make sure there are no conflicts, and also to clean up any outdated language. Or I understand it hasn't been looked at since 1986, was when it's first went into effect, the charter. Obviously, a lot of things legally have changed since then. We're just proposing recommendations, and none of our recommendations, I think, will be anything that's radical. It's more, this is the way we recommend that you might want to be doing this now, but that's our approach, and we discussed a time frame about 30 days to provide a recommendation, so that's what we're looking at.
Does anybody have any questions?
Good luck.
Well, yeah, just a quick one. You said you've done compliance reviews for other jurisdictions.
Yes.
What are typical things that you find?
One big thing that I've found is around 1966, a lot of jurisdictions across the state use this basic form charter. And I don't know the history of why they used it. I think it was prepared by the state. And a lot of them haven't, we review them, find that they haven't changed much since then. In fact, many of this, sometimes they'll have each section will have a cite to when it was originally enacted, and then it was changed, and it'll say first enacted 1966. A lot of it is correcting outdated references with respect to state law. For example, there's a lot of references to statutes that don't exist anymore that have been, for example, local government article went into effect a couple of years ago and got rid of a lot of the sections of state law. Certain financing changes, election changes, ways violations of ordinances are treated. There's a lot of things like that that need to be cleaned up to reflect how local governments operate.
Okay. Good. Okay.
So just thank you, Patrick.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
our next steps, Tori has given Patrick a thumb drive with code, ordinances, regs, and policies. He's going to use that to conduct his review. He may reach out to Tori. He will likely reach out to Ron, who is still our attorney, just for clarification. Ron's not going anywhere. This is a special project. On the side, we're already consuming Ron's time on our ordinance review. So as he needs to reach out to people, if he has questions, he will, and Ron is ready to respond with any historical information he can dig out of his files. And then we hope it should take about 30 days, as was in the RFP. If they can complete their review, get their report written, we may be able to present in the November meeting the findings. We may have to put it off to December, just depending on how long it takes them to get their report done in the end. But we should be able to present to residents in November or December. And then obviously we'll present consistent with what we would need to do with attorney-client privilege, since their product will be privileged.
Could we get our regulations and policies up on the website?
They are.
They are.
Tori has been
Yes.
busting a move with the website.
Okay, because last I looked, they were not there. Okay, great.
It looks
It's
very
been-
different from what I've...
Yeah, it's really been a trial, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, just precise work.
Yeah.
And again, Ron has been able to find some historic documents that have helped make that possible.
Okay, good.
Anything you want to add?
No.
So do we think, are we saying that what's on the web now is up to date, or as up to date as we think we can make it?
I feel confident that most of the most relevant ones are up there. What's not up there are, for example, a resolution to pass the budget for fiscal year 2012, which is not, those things are not up there yet. But things that have ongoing relevance, like parking policy, debt policy, investment policy, those are all up there now.
Right. And Ron may pull a couple things out of storage that we'll post, but he needs a little bit more lead notice than what we gave him today to find executed copies, if he has them.
We're into different questions, and I need to be saying thank you.
Yeah.
And we look forward to your report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming to visit with us. My other question about all of this, Tori, was, now, and I'm going to lose it, is that, I know what it was. Are you still losing stuff off of the web?
I don't think we're losing things, but I'm discovering, I haven't systematically gone through every link in the website.
Right.
Some links work and some links don't, and I don't know why some don't. But as they get discovered, for example, the auditors went looking for the fiscal year 2014 minutes. The minutes around it were there, but when you clicked on that particular link, it didn't work. I don't know why. I repaired it.
You had repaired it at one time.
Well, short of going through every single set of minutes for every year, that's going to take a lot of time. But as the relevant ones are discovered, I fix those. as I discover them. And then,
Yeah,
as we
because
have
I saw
time,
somebody called in about some, oh, that was the auditors that had called in.
Yeah.
And where, I mean, can I ask about where are we with Brian and the web page, or is that not a question I should be asking?
This past week, there was he was responsive to me this last week because I needed to get the website verified for YouTube.
Right?
It was sort of a technical issue I couldn't deal with, and he turned it around very quickly, so I was happy this week.
Okay.
But in terms of
It's on the list of things to do.
Okay.
Is
Thank
that
you.
correct? Did I? Okay.
Update on elections and ethics. Did anybody hear from Leanne that she was or wasn't coming? Did anybody talk to her? Was I supposed to do that? Okay, ouch. Moving on to committees. Minutes. Darn, huh? We have meeting minutes from September 17th that have been out. And corrections have been sent in. Are there any more
Tiffany
comments?
had more suggestions, which I didn't incorporate in the version that's in your booklet. So how do we want to handle it?
I sent them around, everybody saw them, they were, okay.
Right, and we've approved them.
With Tiffany's changes.
With Tiffany's changes.
Okay.
And so if there's a motion to approve with
I'll
Tiffany's
move to
changes.
approve the minutes of both meetings, September 17th and September 24th, and, wait a minute.
In October.
October 8th, we don't have.
That
No.
was on the agenda because we thought there might be a quorum at the tree committee meeting, but there was not.
In October 24th was when we appointed Susan to the council. That was
We
an
approved this
executive
already.
session, and that we've approved by email.
Okay.
So yes, you can make
Okay.
the motion to
I would
approve.
make a motion to approve all the relevant minutes. Meetings.
I second that.
There are two
Questions?
cringing municipal attorneys in the room.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Update from the tree committee held on
Okay.
October 8th.
We had a room full of people, at least 25. Many very interesting comments that were made. I would say that virtually all the comments wanted us to go further than we had in terms of our recommendation. Let me just refresh your mind and the recommendations. The basic philosophy is to plant trees for the future, rather than to try to control the taking down of trees today. And that there are 4 recommendations. One is to subsidize the plantings on private property. The second is to have in a building site plan a list of trees that are coming down that will be affected. That's required in some county site plans for larger developments, but not for single lot developments. The third recommendation is that if canopy trees are taken down of a certain size and species, that they be replaced by new trees. We're not trying to control the taking down of trees, but simply saying replace. And a fourth one is that if there are no canopy trees on a property that's undergoing major construction, that they plant one. So one of our council members, or committee members, who is a property developer himself, he made a very interesting distinction. He says, we are not controlling people's preferences, residents' preferences. If you want to take down a tree because you like sun or playground or you're planting roses or something, do it. If you're a builder, and there's a presumption here that major construction is being undertaken not by a resident but by a developer or builder, then we are requiring you to plant a tree. It's not saying you cannot take down any, but there's a requirement to plant. And this is a kind of a de facto kind of delineation. There could be a person a resident who tears down their own house and builds it up, and so that we would be affecting a resident. But in general, what we see is that, and where the real problem has been, are developers coming in who clear cut the lots for their convenience, not because of their personal values, but because you can get higher loans, larger loans, and it makes your your backhoe operator easier for him to work around trees. That was his view, and that we don't have to be in business here making life easier for developers, but we do want to recognize the mix of values of residents. And so this is why we are saying that construction beyond a certain size should have a requirement of putting in a new tree. Now, with all of this, there is a release valve or safety valve. You need to have some kind of an escape clause, a variance hearing or something, but we didn't want it to make it as onerous and difficult or expensive as the variance hearings that we have for on the building code. We didn't come up with any language on that, any specific language. We thought that would be the job of the council and council. But we did cite it as being a desirable attribute that there should be an escape clause that is relatively easy to bring forward and to describe. Now, the one last thing, I can't remember if it's in the charter or the code, says that trees are desirable and that public trees bring value to the community. And one of the things that we try to say in the report, based on a great deal of research, is that private trees bring a great deal of value to the community as a whole, not just to the property that is planting a new tree. And that kind of gives us the legal cover to say that it's okay to provide a village subsidy to private trees, is that it adds value to the community as a whole, not just to the private property owner. So I think that's where we are. I would like to push forward. From my recollection, Tiffany, I think we have not had an email or a person at the meeting that has said, do less. Everyone is suggesting do more. Do more than we've gone. Prohibit the taking down of trees.
I would concur with that in the most part. I think there was comments on the listserv. Right. There were a couple people who concurred with some of the comment on the listserv, and they did attend the meeting, although I think they did not speak up at the meeting just because it didn't appear to be a decision-making meeting. I think when there's a time for the council to make decisions, they might be more vocal.
The one comment is kind of keep your hands off my trees, and essentially on private property. And we are not putting our hands on their trees. No tree will be harmed by our policies or recommendations. But we are suggesting that when builders come in on a major building project, that they can take down what they want, but they have to replant. So that
can we differentiate between residents and non-residents?
I don't think so legally.
That is my Ron Bolt question.
No.
Which was central to a lot of the conversation, and I think that's an education piece that we have to be really clear about. Property owner is property owner. It's not a resident who wants to add to their kitchen versus builder who wants to
spec houses.
So we tried to come up with a number of square feet involved in a project as a delineation of what would look like a tear down major construction. This is something that we would have to play around with if we were to go forward with it, to see how you can make this kind of dividing line between development versus residential improvements and changes.
Right. And how much of an issue is keeping water on the property interfering with planting trees?
That is, as Josh will tell you, who put together a couple of sample site plans on the small lots, on the smaller 6,000 square feet lots. If you have a house that's built up to the maximum of the building code for that lot, and the required dry wells or drainage installations, there's not a lot of room for a tree.
8,000 square feet.
What is it?
All the way up to 8,000.
Up to the 6,000 square feet is really chancy.
But up to 8,000 square feet.
Now there is the opportunity to put trees in the corners of a lot, and along fences and so on. Typically, is often where they go is along the fence lines. So.
But canopy versus ornamental, I think, came into play there about, the larger canopy trees you're not likely to put right along a fence line. I don't know if that came up.
They can go, depending on what's there, if there's retaining walls or fences or so on. But so this is why we said we need to have some kind of a safety valve here, because there could likely be many cases that you cannot put a tree in.
So did you agree on recommendations?
Yeah, the recommendations are in the report.
So do you want to forward those recommendations to the council for consideration?
Yeah, in fact, the easiest one would be to budget for the tree subsidies. And let me tell you what's involved there. On the average, new trees are costing a little less than $500 to buy the tree and to install them. $475, depending on the tree, $450 to $500. When Section 5 did a subsidy 10, 12 years ago now, the first year there was a huge response. It was like this latent demand that was just sitting there. And they said the first year, they didn't count, but from what they recall, about 100 people requested trees. After that, there was like 10 a year, plus or minus one or two. And so what it looks like is that a lot of people would like to do this, but have no idea what tree, where's the nursery, who can come and do it. If the village were to not only subsidize it, but to do the contracting for it, it takes a huge amount of kind of information requirements off the homeowner. They could get a pamphlet of, say, here are the trees, here are their qualities, pick one. In Section 5, the arborist comes out. Is this the right tree for where you want to do it? Makes a decision, yeah, that's good, and they go ahead with it. And that's costing them about, on the average, $475 per tree per year, per tree to install. So if we were thinking, I would think just since half the fiscal year is gone and we're approaching fall and winter, to kind of start off with a trial run of this, we have to get procedures up and going, selection of arborists, nurseries, installers, all this sort of thing. So I would suggest a startup budget, $5,000 that would get us going and into it, and we learn from there what's involved.
So, Arthur, what I'm trying to understand, and I think I'm still missing it.
Yeah.
What exactly are you proposing? Are you proposing an ordinance that will regulate the trees and the budget, or just the
No, well, there were a couple of things. The budget would just require a budget.
Okay.
It would be we will. Here is our program to subsidize the planting of trees, and there are certain kinds of trees, native canopy trees.
We might want to enshrine that in some sort of
Right, is that an ordinance?
Right. That would, there would probably be an ordinance or a policy or something.
It's a difficult question to answer with your compliance lawyer. Under Maryland law, there is an argument that municipal governments operate and exercise all their powers by ordinance. It's actually in the statute, but it is common practice to exercise some powers by informal policies. If this is a trial program,
what do our policies? Where do policies fit in?
Well, frankly, in some instances, it's semantics, because you can have an uncodified ordinance, and the uncodified ordinance would just require you to go through your typical public notice and hearing process.
I'd be more comfortable that this be part of the whole tree proposal, so that we're looking at all of the pieces together.
Well, they're separate. They're really separable pieces. One is the appropriation for the planting,
right?
And that could require an ordinance to do it. I'm not sure, or was it just an appropriation for an activity? The other one to include trees listed on the site plan. That's a separate, that would go under the building code thing. And separate to that would be replacing trees, again, probably in the building code, section. And again, that would have to be dealt with in a separate way, in a separate consideration, in a separate ordinance, rewriting the building code. So I think these are all separable issues.
I would still like to see them all, that we get the whole plan at once and look at, partly because it seems to me part of what you're selling is the positive thing of the plan is we're open to planting trees on private property, subsidizing that. And it seems to me if you look at that as part of the whole policy, if people have questions about the policy, that they may see that as a selling point. And that, I don't know if there's a downside with what you're proposing, but I think seeing it all together for myself would be useful.
It's in the report, it's online, it was sent to everybody. Okay, we can just print them out.
Okay.
But it's also, I think, translating into actually what changes would we as a council need to make to implement this.
So kind of like
an extra step.
We have the policy proposals, but then what would it take to execute those? Like one of the questions that arose about, can we distinguish between resident and builder? And Ron says no.
Right, we were aware of that.
One of the ones that I talked to briefly Doug about, the second proposal, was having all the trees marked on site plans. And Doug is not sure that we require that in the code right now.
We don't.
If we do add that as a requirement in the code, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not offending you here, he could say there's a tree there, but the second piece of that proposal is that they name what the tree is. And Doug's not prepared to go around.
That's right, he can't do that. So that would require, so this is why, if we were to go this route, we have to discuss this. What's the cost of doing that? What's the burden on the property owner on doing this?
Or we can flip the burden onto any builder or any property owner who's assuming the responsibility. They may be taking down a tree. They can, we can put it as a requirement in our code. You must draw the trees in the plan. You must identify what kind of trees they are. But I think all of that we have to talk about the administrative costs.
And that's right. And the other thing, we noted that in one of the neighboring jurisdictions that has such a requirement, nobody actually went out and checked. The requirement was there, and when I asked, well, are the builders actually doing that? The answer was, well, the requirement is there, we suspect so. But I won't mention the jurisdiction or the people involved or their attorney.
It's not mine. I know which one he's talking about. It's not one of mine.
So, but there is a burden. There is an administrative burden on this.
So would it be proper procedurally to do a work session that would flesh out some of these issues, or what's the appropriate?
I'm not going to come up with ordinances.
It's up to you. I would suggest you have a work session, or you have a discussion at the next meeting. Go through the proposal, point by point, and decide what you like, what you don't like, and when you decide what you like, then we can talk about how to implement it.
I think what we like and don't like might be impacted by the answer to some of the questions.
I'll try to come up with some very specific points in the next week or so.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
So we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting as a discussion about each specific proposal. Thank you, Arthur. I came to the tree committee presentation, and not only did they do a lot of work just doing the research for the report, but I think there was very good dialogue with a lot of the residents who came, asking questions, and Josh's colorful drawings were very helpful to people who weren't familiar with Montgomery County's requirements for water retention. That was...
Okay, to move on.
Yes, sir.
The village survey. Katya.
Okay. So this year we started a new tradition. There was a new survey that came out. It was open for 2 weeks, as you know, and to prepare for the survey, we had the work session where we met with, and probably just giving it for Susan's benefit, we met with a survey expert that it was free. It was a volunteer time. It was Arthur's friend who does this for Census Bureau, I guess, right? Okay.
Yeah, for more than 15 years of the census.
Right. So he reviewed our proposed questions, gave us recommendations, we made some tweaks there. And he also set our expectations in terms of what the normal response rates are. And he said something like a 30% response rate is actually quite high for a survey of this size. A lot of times people don't respond to surveys because, the life doesn't depend on it, I guess. So that was the work that went into it. We sent it out to 400 unique email addresses that represent over 90% of the village households. There were numerous reminders that went out that Tori sent out from both Constant Contact, which is our official source of information from the village office, and the listserv that is not official, but yet we wanted to reach every resident, so if that's what residents rely on, that's what was the thinking there. And then for those residents that wanted to do a paper survey because they're more comfortable with that, they were made available. So it closed on September 30th. We received a total of 106 responses. Less than a dozen of those were paper, so most of them did come in through email. And that represents over 30% of village residents. So according to our survey expert, that was a success. Some of the answers were exactly what we anticipated. Others gave us more things to think about, I think. So, for instance, no one really wanted to reduce their services. I think that's not surprising. And the vast majority of residents are satisfied with what they receive.
Right.
Some residents would like to see an expansion of services. That's, I think, also quite natural. So the expansion of services they wanted was shoveling sidewalks for the elderly. That's something that we had in the past. So a lot of people think that's a good service to provide. Additional police patrols. I think there's been a lot of attention in the last year on car break-ins, so that's also natural. I mean, we pay for 10 extra hours per week in addition to what the county provides. People want to see some more of that if that's possible. And, okay. There was a significant positive response on the new management, so good job, Tori. But then, of course, there were also some people who responded that they wanted to see better communication and more transparency. And when I read the text responses, what I found to be a common theme was that people feel that these council meetings are they're not sure what will go on in these meetings and also what was the outcome. So we have an agenda and we post minutes, but apparently they're not easily accessible enough for some residents to feel like that's good information. So what I'm recommending here is that and I think we've started to do this actually after this came out. So send out push communications with the agenda so you don't have to click in multiple places to see what's on the agenda. And that's what you did already.
Today, right.
So I thought that was great that you can immediately see in the email exactly what's on there and what time. And also sending the same thing, push communications. And I'm recommending making it timely, say within a week of meeting minutes of what was the outcome of the meetings.
Or a recording. Or if the recordings are posted.
Not everybody has, we already post the recordings, but not everybody has the 2 hours to listen through a recording.
A link to the recording. You could do that.
Yeah, I don't know how. Well, people can access it through our website already. Maybe posting a link at the bottom if they want to hear anything. But I think it's critical to send something out within a short enough window and people still remember, oh yes, I missed this meeting, but I was curious about that. So what really was the outcome of that?
I just have one question about how does that work with us approving minutes?
That's true.
We type up the minutes after the meetings, but then we review and approve what they were, often based on the recording. Can we review and approve over email so that they can be posted faster? And we have been memorializing our approval in meetings, often after approving over email. So,
under the current state of the law, yes.
So yes, we can approve an email.
Yes, I would expect eventually emails are going to become meetings that are subject to the Open Meetings Act. But
do you have
right
concerns
now, yes.
about us approving over email, posting, and then memorializing that approval at the next meeting?
No.
Okay.
No.
So I think that I think it's a great recommendation. I think we're in a position to soon have the staff capabilities to do that. I think we have to be honest about if we're in a 2-hour meeting or a 3-hour meeting, it takes a while to get those minutes done.
Yeah.
And I loved the email coming out today in advance, and I think getting at a minimum, the recording posted within, a few days after the meeting. And if
Is it hard to post the recording?
It requires making a movie, and as Devin can attest, it can sometimes take 7 or 8 hours for it to convert.
And do you have to...
I get it started on that computer,
Right.
and I leave that computer alone. I don't
Right.
It churns
all day
away.
long while it churns.
And I guess we should also consider how long does it take to prepare minutes? I mean, that's a lengthy
Well, so that's
task,
part of the
too.
second piece.
Right.
I think the post, I like the idea, and I think that we are going to be very close to able to doing all of this within,
A month.
So how much dedicated time does it take to prepare minutes?
Many hours.
Okay.
In part because it's interrupted all the time, I would
Well,
guess.
that's why I said dedicated
Yeah.
time.
Well, I finished them in an uninterrupted Monday night, but it's to be technically precise, it takes time. It takes going back and,
With the amount of detail that
yeah, I mean, yeah.
I thought they were really good, by the way.
Thank you.
Really, really good.
And you're putting in less detail than we used to have.
I'm trying not to have too much detail.
Well, I
but-
remember coming back from the Municipal League, Maryland Municipal League conferences and saying, we only need to have, a vote was taken and this was
Right.
what it was.
I mean, I think
Actions.
the rule of thumb
Yeah,
is what was done, not what was said. It's not a
Right.
transcript.
yeah, yeah.
Nevertheless, there
It gives you the...
significant comments made
Yeah.
that even short of a transcript takes more than just the votes.
Right.
But that's partly what you all want. It could be stripped down to the votes.
On the plus side, that Tori is interviewing 4 candidates tomorrow for assistant manager. So that's getting closer.
Okay.
So I think number 1 recommendation, pushing out the agenda prior.
So that's done.
Done. We can do that easily. And number 2, we should be able to implement, maybe not for this meeting, but hopefully for the next meeting, the November meeting, they could be out pending the hire.
So maybe within a week of this meeting, we can post on Constant Contact that that's what we're aiming for. Within a month to start doing that, right after the assistant manager is hired. To start posting within a week.
I think it's a desirable goal. What's been happening is that other things become more urgent. And it's one of those things that it's nice to have, but it's not necessarily urgent as compared to, let's say, the auditors need documents, they need them now. It can't wait, and that constantly
That
happens.
happens once a year, right, the audit?
Well, but there's
it's an
always
example.
something.
I understand that, but I also think
Yeah.
that we've had such a divisive election, and it's very important to take this feedback seriously and try to patch. If
Right.
people feel like they're not getting communication, we really need to make a solid effort to try to provide that communication to them.
Nobody disagrees.
Okay.
I absolutely agree with you as well,
Yes.
Katya, but the problem is when tree branches fall, people calling their trash wasn't picked up and they want immediate interference with waste management to get it picked up. A car accident happens and they want the oil slick cleaned within the hour. I mean, this happens all the time.
But once you have an assistant, is that going to be?
It will be better. I'm saying the nature of the work is that there are always unexpected things coming up.
Yeah.
And I think many things take perhaps more time than we realize.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on with the survey.
All right.
Yeah, the volunteers, people who volunteered their
We'll get there.
expertise. Oh, you're still
Okay.
going. Oh, okay.
All right, so other things that I thought were interesting in the text comments, and there's actual responses that are ranked here, but the text comments are not visible on that, so
Yeah.
that's why I put it in here separately. So in rank of importance of services that the residents felt, trash ranked by far the highest. So any sort of trash pickup was very important to Old Village residents. And community events were actually the least important.
Least desired, yeah.
So while I'm not at all recommending that we cut down on community events, I think when we plan for the budget for community events, we really should keep this in mind, that it ranked so low.
Right.
So, additional services that people would like to receive, we got quite a few comments on street lighting. People want to move street lighting forward. It was not one of the options people typed it in. Repaving streets is also very important. So people are tired of living, I guess, on
rough streets.
On rough streets, yes. Better street cleaning. There were comments that the street cleaning crew we have now is quite ineffective.
We don't have one right now. Well, we do actually.
That would explain it. But they referenced a specific cleaning crew that.
The one that wandered to us from Chevy Chase Village and was confused about which municipality.
Where they were? Oh.
That was. It was bad.
Free non-clean.
It was a free pushing of the dirt to the middle of the road.
Right.
On the side where
Yeah, so people feel like we can do better than that.
I
So they pushed it. I wasn't aware they pushed it to the middle, and the truck was supposed to come down.
No, it was a truck that did sweeping, but the way our streets are pitched, instead of sweeping and vacuuming up, it just swept to the middle and left it there.
Because of the pitch, it can't pick it up, and we ended up with gobs of dirt going down the middle of the street.
The gutters were cleaned up.
Oh, yeah, sort
We're
of.
paying these guys. Actually, nothing.
Right.
They asked.
Okay, moving on.
All right, tree care, also not surprisingly, was on there. So people want to make sure that the trees are taken care of. And leaf vacuuming was typed in, even though it was one of the options.
But not mentioning names.
Not by me.
Okay.
Okay, a couple of responders also requested to reopen the path from corner of Summit and Taylor to the park.
Is it closed?
Is that closed?
I have no idea.
But
I'm just saying it was in there.
That's private property.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there are any residents who've been. The corner of Summit and Taylor, but
that goes through the Shepherd Park.
Property.
I live there. My kids have used it. It's private property.
Yeah.
For years, the order allowed people to go through, and there's a gate right to it. But because of trash, dog poop, and other problems, they said, we're done. And it's closed because of abusive conduct.
We've seen something similar on between Raymond and the back of to get up to the park.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, we used to have from the dead end of Bradley to Chevy Chase or Pinehurst Circle.
You could get up there? There was? But it was over private property.
Used to allow people to go over their private property, but they have now stopped that. Okay. So I think that's just another one of those educational things, that's a private property.
Maybe we could put it on the newsletter.
Yeah. Did you know?
Totally blank.
An item for the newsletter.
Did you know? Yep.
Okay. Which services would you be willing to reduce? Vast majority of responders stated that there's no need to reduce services. Other responders pointed out that they need additional information. That was fair enough. There was not enough information to really
make a choice.
Yeah. And there were some suggestions for mild reductions, but anyway. What information would people like to receive? Notification of weather emergencies was high on the list. Power outages, utility changes, etc. So
on that one, I think that I recommend that it's probably one of my 3 phones, that we educate folks about, and I know this has been done in the past, but just a reminder about the Montgomery County Alert System, because you can sign up for emails, you can sign up for texts, and you get all of that directly to your mode of communication of choice. I mean, the village office can receive that information from Montgomery County Alert, but then,
and that's what's been done in the past. But
it's people can receive it directly.
Right.
We're not
faster.
The village is not a 24/7 operation, but Montgomery County Alerts is.
Right.
So again, something for the newsletter would be helpful, right? People also want to see neighborhood news again.
Right,
Who's moved in? Who's moved out? New babies. We used to have things like that. Changes to trash schedule, more information on construction, annual report on goals and accomplishments. That could be, we could say that
Annual
this
report,
is what
yeah.
we've done. Maybe before the election, when the full year is done. Volunteers, we received 4 volunteers as community organizers and event planners. So that could be good for the 100th.
One of whom is here today and is going to be helping out with the Halloween festivities.
Yes.
Thank you, Sally.
I'm an organizer, I'm an Indian.
You're an Indian. Yes.
Speaking of that, I had one volunteer to be on any additional tree committee or continuing tree committee, and that's something we might want to talk about. Do we want to have a semi-permanent or continuing tree committee to consider these various activities, either new members, old members, or volunteers who may want to come in?
So maybe as part of the points that you present at the next meeting,
Yeah, right.
we can have that as an action item.
Yeah.
Let's bring Dan into the next meeting, if we can.
Yeah, and Paul.
Sort of trees-
Paul doesn't do email, Paul Wolf. So,
Okay.
Okay, continuing.
All right, 3 responders would like to offer their expertise on strategic planning and governance if we choose to do that. And we have a
lighting
resident
expert.
lighting expert.
Oh, we need that person.
is it
Yes.
a legitimate, really? Or
That's
are
what-
they just volunteering?
People
to do
can
it?
type in whatever they
Right.
want. So I'm
Reporting.
just
Okay.
summarizing what we
Okay.
received.
Yeah, I saw that.
And one thing that really stood out to me at the end is that there was a comment that we need to foster a sense of community, and I really think that's important. We should keep that in mind. when
Right. Well, but they don't want to have community events, which has been an issue.
Well,
But-
maybe it's people that want to spend a lot of money on community events, right? So how is your...
I don't know.
Well, and there's also, we asked, it was a ranking system. So
Right.
community events did receive some attention and support. It wasn't as high ranking as a couple of the other things, but that doesn't mean that there's not support for having community.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think that more.
Garbage is essential, and party is nice.
I kind of had trouble with the ranking system because obviously the services, the garbage, the street repairs, all of that, it comes before community events. So obviously they're going to drop out to the bottom.
Well, actually, the way that it was phrased is the services that were listed there, they were all in addition to what the county provides, right? So it's not that the alternative is not to collect trash at all. It's just...
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah, it was what priority. And it was hard to give it a priority when garbage is more priority than community.
Well, one method to bring people in is to have more committees where residents are more active in doing things like events, trees, other, even lighting, so that you get people actually putting some hard effort into it.
So that's certainly some feedback that we'd use for future surveys. 'Cause we're hoping to do this every year, right? So we can improve and
Right.
do better.
I think you did a great job that for the first time out of the blocks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So is your goal, Katya, to have something that goes out from the council just to kind of summarize or
I'm
is
hoping
this
to
the
put this.
summary? Okay.
I'm hoping to put something in the newsletter that maybe is the first part of this.
Okay.
Not quite maybe all the detail, but the
Okay.
summary of this. Then there's also in here the actual answers that we received. So the first few are baseline for what the responses were, how people are satisfied or not satisfied with village operations, and the rankings.
I
There was
went
something
through like
interesting.
Katya did, and I just looked in Constant Contact to see the results and also all of the comments that people submitted, and I thought it was really helpful to see residents that put their names forward that said I want to help. I don't have time all the time, but I might have
Right.
some downtime. I want to help, and also just very frank feedback about I called the office. Tori was very pleasant.
There were a lot of positive comments on village operations.
And there were also things that we clearly need to improve on.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So the questions that we had on the building permits, there was a even distribution there. So that what it tells to me is that really wasn't a high priority question for residents.
Okay.
It was slightly higher skewed to agree and positive, but probably don't necessarily need to ask that in the future.
Or that the building permit's got it right.
Or the thing is, you're not going to have a strong opinion about it, except if you were really
Right.
had a difficult issue, or if it's so good that it's kind of burnt into your memory. Now, what a great experience that was.
But if something was really, truly, horribly wrong,
Yeah,
maybe you
would it-
would see that. So,
Right.
but I think this says that it's an even
Yeah.
distribution. And then,
Right.
in terms of how people would like to receive communications, email communications ranked at 92.2%. So, most people don't necessarily need to receive paper. Okay. And there was an even distribution across all the streets, so every street was represented. And I'm done.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again. Good job. Okay, back to our favorite is the codes. Okay,
so where
where were we?
So
Yep.
in the,
Various codes.
All right.
Ron and Tiffany.
and
And
Doug and Tori.
Oh, Doug, do you want to come up here while we do
He's
that?
bracing himself over there. The good news is that Ron and Tori and Doug put a lot of time into the staff recommendations, which should be the last page in this section 4 binder.
Got it.
And Ron has informed me that that boils down all that was left in the amendment to the code for us to discuss.
Oh, really? Oh. I was
From
going
the
through-
policy standpoint.
From the policy.
Okay. Oh, perfect.
So, Ron, do you want to do the technical brush through, or do you want to do the policy questions first?
The policy,
Okay.
okay. I think everyone's probably already got a good handle on the technical, unless you say otherwise.
Okay.
All right, so we're picking up on page 15 of the draft. That's where we left off before.
Okay, is that, we're going to the staff recommendation?
Yeah, well, you can have that
Okay,
in front of you.
okay, right. Okay, that's what I'm
Refer
going
to
He's
as
going to
well.
make them work together for
15,
us.
okay,
Yeah.
good.
All right,
Right.
so last time we talked about whether the council should decide, as a policy question, whether to pare down what
Right.
types of projects require permits. Because
Yeah.
right now, we require a permit for the installation of any structure, and structure is all encompassing, any assembly of materials. But our substantive regulations as to where those structures can be located
Right.
only apply to buildings and their appurtenances. So we require a permit for a fence, but we don't dictate how tall it can be, where it can be located. We'll require a permit for play equipment, trellis, arbor, gazebo.
Right.
So
So,
my question on this was, tell me if I should stop.
no, go ahead.
We had a discussion with a resident recently about construction versus building and what our permitting process includes. And the suggestion was made that we don't have a construction permit or it's all based on the right of way. And we said, no, it encompasses the whole thing. So I want to make sure that we're not going to lose the encompassing the whole thing if we make this change.
No, you would still require a permit for the construction of buildings and their appurtenances.
Okay.
Buildings is currently defined as a structure with a roof
Okay.
that's designed for the occupancy of people or property. And appurtenances such as decks, porches, and we also include currently heat pumps, generators, air conditioning units. Those are the only things that are subject to our setbacks and other regulations. Although we require a permit for a swimming pool or swing set, we don't dictate where it could be. So the policy question for you is there still a rationale to continue to require a permit for things that we don't substantively regulate?
Right.
Such as fences,
Right, exactly.
swimming pools.
Yes.
No.
And so I'll give you
Retaining
the,
walls,
Yeah.
swimming pools, right away permit.
Right.
the reason to continue permitting is it gives us an opportunity to make sure a fence is going in on the applicant's lot, not a neighbor's lot, in case the county is asleep at the wheel. But The county is requiring a permit for this as well, so maybe there's not enough accomplished at the village level to require folks to go through a second level of regulation and fees.
So that the only time we would be involved is if they encroach on public property, on village right-of-way.
That's right. So yeah, we're dealing with the building code right now, and we have a separate section of the code that says you can't put anything in the right-of-way without village permission.
Right.
That would remain.
Yeah, that's, okay.
And that would include, well, I don't understand, at all why we're doing fences when we don't. I'd take it out. I would vote to take it out.
One resident approached me about, they supported the idea that we not be issuing permits for fences that we cannot demonstrate are on the applicant's property. They were concerned that if we strike this in its entirety, however you want to phrase it, that they would not have notification if their neighbor was going to build a fence next to them. Is there a way to, when we are notified by the county, to keep the notification of the neighboring residents without us stamping approval on the on a permit? Mm-hmm. And that's a question for the rest of the council. Is that something we would still support staff time and energy doing?
I'm wondering, you're saying, a fence, you could put a swimming pool, a tree. There's all sorts of ways for one neighbor to encroach on the property of another. And that's kind of like between neighbors, isn't it? It's not, where do we come in? Where do we get involved?
I would say it's definitely possible, and perhaps that's what the code is doing now. And we call it a permit so that we can require a fee and so that we can recoup some of staff's time in providing that notification and that service to all the residents. So we could continue to do it for free, and it doesn't have to be called a permit. It could be...
Neighbor notification is only a tiny fraction of the staff time it takes to process a permit.
So we could continue doing neighbor notification as a general policy when we are notified by the county of a construction project of some sort.
Yes. And I will say fences are a little bit of a different animal, because typically we're in the front yard. We do want to make sure they're not in the right of way, and we can only do that if we're given a boundary survey.
And that's the sticking point.
Mm-hmm.
So
Boundary
if someone was
surveys
to
are
put
expensive.
a 10-foot fence in their front yard, we're okay with that?
No, the county isn't.
Okay.
Well, the county's fine with it.
No, they aren't with 10-foot fences.
What was the
No.
question?
A 10-foot fence in their front yard.
No, you can have a 4-foot fence in the front yard.
Okay.
If it's on the property line, you have to get a letter of permission from your neighbor. That's what the county's requiring. And if it's a corner lot, it can't be taller than 3 feet within 15 feet of the intersection in order to preserve motorist sight lines.
Right.
But other than that,
Now,
county doesn't.
does this do anything about the paved area requirement?
We're going to get to that.
Oh.
That's one of the 4 items we got to talk about tonight.
Okay, but does removing all of these trellises and so on get into, so that's not going to affect the paved area requirement?
No.
Okay.
Mhm. That's a separate regulation for driveways.
Okay.
Well, I'm sympathetic with...
Well, what about patios? If you want, you say, this is a patio, I'm paving over my backyard, and we're not regulating patios.
Well, we don't regulate it now.
Yeah, but we
can do
do
that now.
regulate
We only
Front
regulate
yard.
non-permeable areas.
Oh,
Front-
That's
front yard.
Only in the
changed.
front.
Yeah.
Front yard,
Changed.
not backyard.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could pave over, okay,
your whole
your whole
backyard.
backyard. Okay, that was my only concern.
My concern about the tree notification is
Fence
that...
notification.
Pardon?
Fence notification.
I'm sorry, fence notification, is that it gets us back in the miss of, okay, well, they're all calling Tory saying, I don't want so-and-so to put a fence up, and then, we get dragged into that mess again that we have no responsibility for. And that was why I would not
Yeah.
even send a notification out.
Just direct them to the county. That's county issued permit.
Right.
Yeah, look, we get out of it.
Right. So the staff recommendations 1 and 4 before you is if the council finds that there's not enough accomplished with requiring a permit for things that we don't impose substantive regulations on, that we eliminate that permit because fences are a little different animal. When they're in the front yard, we could give ourselves a level of comfort by reviewing the village-wide survey of the right-of-way lines and use that document to make sure that a fence isn't going to be in the village right away.
So when the county notifies us that they've approved a permit, right?
Well, the county doesn't notify us.
Yes, they do.
We get an automated notification. Doug and I were just talking about this week. We have an agreement that goes back to 2009. We get an automated notification from the county for a long list, and even in mechanical permits, electrical permits, we get a notice.
About 30, 40 things.
That's an encroachment on.
Okay.
It's supposed to.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I would just say, Richard, remember we were talking about business registrations last week?
Yes.
And I suggested, since we don't do anything about it, it shouldn't be in the code. And you suggested, well, just in case.
Yes. Well, is this a just in case?
No, I would say get rid of both of them. We don't do
of
anything
the business,
about it.
we don't do anything.
Yeah,
well, there were some people that raised their eyebrows about that, but I didn't hear from anybody. Okay, but we're on this one.
That issue's been tabled.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we have agreed no permits on fences.
For 1 and 4.
One.
We didn't
is
discuss
permits,
walls though.
fences and walls.
Yes.
4 has walls.
That's the same. It's treated the same as fences. It's part of the same recommendation number 4. So you wouldn't need a permit for a wall, either a freestanding wall.
I agree. We don't do anything. The county
Right.
does. Get out of the business.
Right.
But walls could affect water.
We require
Stormwater
a permit
drainage,
for a
which we
retaining
do
wall,
not regulate.
but we don't have anything to say in our code about where that retaining wall can be.
Yeah, the county does regulate sediment control and water drainage.
Walls over a certain height, the county permits, but not walls over lower than
If
that.
they're 3 feet or lower, they don't, right?
I believe it's 30 inches
Or 30.
of wall or 54 inches from the footing up. The county permits that. And it's basically a structural review more than anything else.
Okay.
I am of the opinion that if we cannot say that it is on the applicant's property, then we should not be issuing a permit, because I don't want, not that this would ever happen, but I don't want one resident to waive that permit in front of another resident and say, but the
They
village
said
said I
it's
could
okay.
do this.
Well, you can. I mean, the question really is cost as well. You can demand a survey,
Right.
a boundary survey. As the code is currently written,
Right.
staff can decide on a case-by-case basis what must be
Richard, push the
submitted
bubble
within the
through.
application.
Thank you.
So you could
Then we get
decide to
into
get
a
into that
gray
business if
area
you wanted
of,
to.
yeah, instead of the code being very clear, then we could run into a concern about discretion for different individuals.
Take it out.
Take it out.
Take it out.
Susan?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay.
Aye.
Well, do you agree or
I guess
sort
so.
of?
Sort of.
Do you agree? Oh, you're tussling with it. Okay, we've got 4.
Nothing is being adopted tonight.
Okay.
The next step would be to draft language, and then
Fix
you're
it.
going to see it.
Okay.
And the
And
residents
then-
will get to see it.
Right, and if you decide to introduce an ordinance, then we're going to have a public hearing on it as well.
Yeah.
So
I also think in the meantime, maybe getting, I know that one of the volunteers about the right-of-way survey was Steve Schmall, and he suggested that he might know how to use the program that kills the computers. all
The
the time.
GIS program?
Yeah. So we might reach out to him to see if he can help out with that.
Okay.
all right, so again, one of the appurtenances that we regulate are terraces. So when the code was updated in 2009, language was borrowed from the county and from the town of Chevy Chase, and it's very common when you're dealing with permissible projections to have a list that includes porches, decks, steps, stairways, terraces. And so as Doug has pointed out in connection with a recent application, sometimes it's not clear what's the difference between a patio and a terrace. Currently, we do not regulate at-grade patios. So one applicant argued, well, this is a patio, it's not subject to your setbacks. The building plans labeled it a terrace. It was slightly above grade. If it's a terracing of earth, it's probably a terrace. But the policy question for the council is there any reason to regulate the encroachment of a terrace that's connected to a house like a patio?
What?
So you're not regulating a patio. Do you need to regulate a 4-inch terrace?
What is there any reason to regulate a terrace?
The general rationale for regulating projections into setbacks is to preserve the uniformity of setbacks and spaces in between houses, and especially in Martin's Additions. The Martin's Additions Land Use Task Force and Council found that we are unique in the size of our rear yards. And so rear yards especially, we wanted to preserve open spaces.
What's a practical, give me a practical example of terrace versus patio problem.
Well, the patio's not in the code at all. The terrace is, but it doesn't really call it a projection. It doesn't give a setback. And one of my concerns was that safety, fire and rescue, if you build something that's elevated with no steps or something, have you basically closed off one side? Versus maybe having a fence with a gate, it might be the same issue. So I don't know the answer to what I just brought up. But I mean, we debated it for how long? An hour one day.
It's a reduction in hour.
Fine.
So the way I would see it, if you are getting out of the retaining wall business,
Right, get out of the terrace
get out of the terrace business as well.
I'm even less convinced on the retaining wall now.
Yeah. The only thing terrace, I mean, I can see, and we've seen this where we have residents have a driveway, not a terrace, but a non-permeable surface that they construct that is very close to their neighbor's lot line, then that can significantly change drainage issues onto the neighbor's lot. Is that regulated by the county?
I think in water drainage, you cannot drain onto a neighbor if it interferes. I think, as I recall looking at, if it interferes with the natural flow and all that.
Water can drain onto a neighbor. Is a question of when it's concentrated, and it might be heading to like somebody's window well or stairwell where it might cause flooding. But if it's natural surface flow, it's not regulated.
But if you create a patio or a terrace, you're changing the natural surface.
Well, that's common law. Yeah, I don't know that the county conducts that review. Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's common law. You can't unnaturally.
Right. And remember on the Oxford Street, there were apparently they asserted properties higher than them in, I don't know if it was the county or in D.C., up on Pinehurst Circle or something like that. That was draining. No, it was in the village. That was draining into them because of new driveways.
Okay, so Ron, what you're saying is if we run into this problem where drainage becomes an issue, then we need to refer concerned residents to the county, since they would be regulating the common law issue of water.
No, that is between
common
residents.
law would be resident to resident. I don't believe in reviewing a stormwater drainage plan, the county would say you're not allowed to outfall to this point right here because you're going to unnaturally alter the flow of water. Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but what they will review is whether your overall site plan is appropriate in terms of sediment control, that you're not creating erosion.
Okay.
But
Katya, does that help you with your concern?
But right now you don't regulate stormwater.
Right.
As the code exists now,
if you want to restrict how close these things can be to the neighbors, you need to actually strengthen the code, not leave it as it is.
Yeah.
We'd have to require.
To control it.
Yeah.
So do we regulate decks?
Yes.
Decks are appurtenances.
Yes.
So to me, a terrace and a deck are very similar.
Well, and that,
Depends on the material.
that's why it's in the code now.
Right.
That's why it's in the code now.
So-
I mean,
Patio, terrace, deck. Is that the...
Yeah.
Well,
But a terrace could be as high as a deck.
can it?
Yes, it's just different material.
Yeah, we have a deck that's like 8 inches above ground level.
A deck.
A deck, yeah.
A deck is typically on supports, on foundation supports, and it's elevated.
Yeah, so it's elevated.
terrace
8 inch.
Is at ground level, but it may involve some
Yeah.
retaining walls to level out what would otherwise be a slope.
Well, it's typically at ground level, but not necessarily.
A
Typically
terrace can be
what
above
is-
the ground?
It can be well above ground.
What, with a wedge, what?
Terrace can
A
be.
terrace, oh yeah, terrace can be high terrace.
Depends on the height of the retaining wall.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
But it's still on the ground, right? I mean,
yeah, it's still, yeah, it's ground
Well,
level.
Part of
everything
the
is
ground.
eventually on the ground. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, you build it
But
up.
the surface is on the
I mean,
ground.
if somebody wants to build a
If it's not on the ground, it's not a deck, it's a deck.
29-inch retaining wall and make a terrace in the middle of it, we're saying, if we do this, we're saying we don't want to regulate that.
The
correct?
code does
Right.
not regulate it now.
Right,
Well, the code would regulate it in terms of
If they call it a
that
terrace on
wall
their
could not
plan.
project into the rear setback more than 9 feet.
What wall?
The retaining wall
Retaining
supporting
wall.
the terrace. Well, the terrace itself could not project more than 9 feet into the rear setback.
The way I understand the code, all of these things have to be attached to the building, which is a projection, versus out in the backyard as a matter of changing the grades. So if it's not attached to the building, we don't regulate it at all.
Right.
If it's attached to the building, we call it a projection, and then we have some control.
And if you would be prohibited from doing it, you could simply
Unattach
build.
it.
yeah.
So,
You
If
could
we-
jump across the ditch to the terrace.
yeah.
I, get rid of it,
Get rid of it. 2 votes,
Susan?
get rid.
3.
Well, you can discuss it later.
Right.
We can
This-
discuss
this
it
is
later, or
just-
you can draft. How
Draft
about
it.
this?
Yeah.
Since there's nothing being adopted tonight, he drafts it, we follow the staff recommendation to draft it as a strike,
Right.
and then it's discussed as part of the ordinance introduction, discussion, and approval process. How do you feel about that? Good.
That
So
means we
we-
don't have to make any decisions. Final.
No,
Not tonight.
This is just
Okay.
but this
Right.
is what we're supposed to be
Instructing me
doing
what you
anyway.
want
Right, we're-
written
down.
so
Right.
Ron,
Okay,
you're
driveway
we're
width.
following your recommendation there.
It's not my recommendation.
Okay, we're following Tori and Doug's recommendation, and we're
Driveway
going
width.
to draft it according to the
Can I
recommendation.
clarify my position on that?
Yes, sir.
I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm saying I have no way of enforcing it, and it's going to be a problem unless you either give me some rules to say this is what they can do, or you take it off. But you can't leave it in the middle.
All right, so
I'm not saying get rid of it.
keeping the character of the village is part of our building code. Do we need to strengthen the terrace thing to keep the character of buildings and appurtenances and whatever else? Do we need to do that, in your opinion?
Either that or get rid of it.
But
I don't care.
I think the rationale behind the staff recommendation was nothing is currently accomplished
Right.
because reasonably and under ordinary circumstances, although possible, someone is not going to build an 8-foot terrace.
8 foot high.
Right, 8-foot high terrace. It's possible, and I've seen it in the town of Chevy Chase. You know,
Well-
someone can regrade their whole rear yard.
Well, we don't
Which
have,
has happened.
do we have lots here that are on steep grades that you would naturally terrace going down your back?
Yeah.
We've terraced our backyard.
Bradley, Bradley,
We just did one on Dell Field
yeah.
a month ago.
Okay,
We
so,
have no control over it.
But
Right,
what this amendment would accomplish is, you know, again, we're not regulating patios.
Right.
So why do we care about a 4-inch terrace?
Because it's not always a 4-inch terrace.
Right.
eight-
So well, but then
Eight
maybe if there is a strong policy to prohibit terraces of a certain height, and maybe that's how we correct the situation by saying terraces measuring more than X feet, measured from the adjoining ground. You know, then we define
But why-
terrace.
but why
so
do we want to
Doug
do that?
Knows what to enforce.
but why would we want to do that?
To prohibit somebody from building a retaining wall of 4 feet with a terrace in the middle of their backyard.
Then I wouldn't even mention the word terrace. I'd tighten the regulations for retaining walls. That's what you're concerned about. You don't care about the ground on each side of it. You compare about that wall. where it's
And
located, how high it
redirecting
is.
water.
Yes.
That's what happened. I mean, that's the terracing is what redirects the water.
No,
And
That's,
Are you good with that, what he just said?
yes, but that undermines
The-
recommendation 1 and 2. And then we're
Right.
getting back into
well, I'm saying you gotta
Permitting walls.
tighten the regulations
Right.
on the walls.
right, which is fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever policy you want, we'll
We can still
implement.
strike the fences, just the walls.
But maybe it's an issue of
But if you're going to say that we're
Burden of proof.
regulating walls because we're concerned about stormwater, then there
We don't
has to
have
be
to
a
explain
reasonable nexus between what you're doing and what you're actually enforcing upon people.
Right.
If you're not really reviewing stormwater, other than saying you can't have a wall without a permit.
well, that is my point exactly, is that people can put in terraces and redirect stormwater, and it's a county issue. I mean, it's one we have chosen to stay out
no,
of.
he's saying it's not a county issue.
It's a private issue.
It's a private, common law.
Yeah.
And we've chosen
The
to,
county will make sure that you have a reasonable and acceptable stormwater drainage plan.
right.
But I don't think the county gets into the.
So if I build just a concrete terrace in my backyard and I don't have a plan, the county's going to save my downhill neighbors from the problem that I created by saying tear it out?
Possibly, if you engage in disturbance of 5,000 square feet or more, you've got to have the engineered site plan. So the county is going to make sure that you're being reasonable with your stormwater.
But they're concerned about sediment control, not stormwater in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, there is stormwater retention requirements at the county level now as well.
So
you
Ron's
may have
gonna-
to stick in a
Ron's
rain
gonna-
tank to catch the new impervious runoff.
Yeah.
And then, like as Arthur said, then you can't put a tree there.
Doug,
Okay.
correct, it's,
Strike
sediment
it.
control is about short-term soil disturbance. And
During construction, they want to
stormwater
make,
is about long-term
Yes.
changes in flow.
Right.
yes.
So
waterfall.
Ron's gonna draft it as we
Right.
concur with the staff recommendation.
Right.
And then,
That's the easy one. We're just deleting the word terrace.
Okay.
don't share your secrets.
The driveway width,
Driveway width. Here's the sticky
the
one.
pictures.
Yeah.
Oh, God, they're in our front of our, are these the ones
Yeah.
we're looking at again?
Right. So the driveway width regulation was one that was borrowed from the town of Chevy Chase, which says basically you can have a driveway, it can't be any wider than 10 feet. You know, people find loopholes in the code and find, well, we can expand our driveway width if we put a walkway right next to it. And so the question comes up, what other things that may be close to or adjoining driveways should be included in driveway width? The town of Chevy,
It's a challenge to clarify the code. That's what it is. It's not a loophole that was found. It's a challenge to clarify
So-
the intent behind it.
so the town addressed the challenge by stating, if you've got a walkway or other surface area within 2 feet of the driveway, we're going to include it in the driveway width, except for a sidewalk that intersects the driveway, as long as that sidewalk is no wider than 4 feet, because the town recognized every driveway is going to be intersected by the public sidewalk. So the public sidewalk width isn't included, but if you've got a walkway right next to it or within 2 feet, that's going to be included. So that's one option that I put in the initial draft for a discussion. Staff recommendation is different and would state we're only going to include that other surface in the width calculation if it is the same surface. If you've got an asphalt driveway, you can't put in an asphalt walkway and tell us that it's not part of the driveway. But if you put in a concrete walkway, pervious paver walkway, sandstone walkway, whatever, that's not going to be regulated. And there's a picture in here of an existing condition of the village to give you an idea of what would then become permissible. So the policy question is, what do you really care about when you're
Yeah,
dictating?
what's the purpose of the driveway width?
So the purpose of the driveway width
Restriction.
is to preserve the uniformity of the streetscape. Driveways should look like
So,
a certain width when viewed from the street, along the whole street.
And this is,
I'm sorry.
right, but the driveway width is in addition to the total impermeable surface of the front yard.
That is-
It's an additional constraint.
Correct.
It's it's
We're not-
non-vegetative surface, which is slightly different than permeable.
Okay,
which is
non-vegetative, okay.
Yeah.
But that regulation
Okay.
would remain unchanged.
It would remain,
So
okay.
another purpose was to eliminate parking pads in front yards. By
Double
limiting-
wide parking pads in the front yard. It's okay to have a parking pad if it's the one width of a driveway.
As long as it's 9 feet.
Right.
But you can't have a parking pad that abuts from the 9-foot drive. That parking pad width would be included. You can have a parking pad in the side yard, but not in the front yard.
I like the staff recommendation versus the original drafting on this one.
And what the original draft said, what was your original draft?
That this would be included because this
It's contiguous.
increases the perceived width
Right,
of the driveway.
Right,
It doesn't really matter what material it is.
Right.
This is a driveway now that's more than 9 feet.
okay. And it's an aesthetic issue.
10 feet, right? Not, or is it 9
It's a
feet?
character preservation
10.
issue.
So what you're saying is there are no circumstances under which a driveway could be more than 10 feet wide, whether or not it includes a walkway.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you saying?
What we're saying is no driveway can be wider than 10 feet of one material.
So the instance that brought this to bear
Right.
was that there was a resident who said, based on my site conditions, my sloping topography,
Right.
the only place that I could put a walkway was right next to my driveway. So I paved my driveway a little wider so that I would have a walkway, but it's all asphalt.
Right.
I repaved my driveway and I created a walkway
Yeah.
next to it. It wasn't a
Correct.
widening of the driveway, it was a new walkway
Correct.
that was inserted
But
next
really,
to
it
it.
was a 12-foot wide.
Well,
Driveway.
it looks like a 12-foot wide drive. This is
That's the question.
that was the
So even
enforcement
if,
problem before us.
Yeah.
so that if somebody went out and painted that 2 feet yellow, which would differentiate it from the driveway, would that count, or are you saying it has to be a different material?
Different material
Okay,
as recommended.
okay.
I think the recommendation preserves the character issue.
The driveway.
The driveway is the driveway. If someone's lot requires that their walkway abut the entirety of their driveway, they're now able to do that as long as they use a different material.
That differentiates the driveway from the walkway, but it's still all figured into the non-vegetative
Right,
surface
yes.
requirement.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because another
Thank you.
challenge could be that someone could create a really wide walkway as a parking pad and say, no, this is a walkway.
But they can't park
But it
here.
would be governed by the non-vegetative
Right.
surface.
Wait a minute, okay, but yeah, suppose, how do you know a driveway's a driveway?
Because it's
That
defined in
would-
our code.
No, but no, a
Well, the
driveway.
original draft would eliminate that problem altogether
Well,
because it's not attached.
But I mean, you have walkways that, I mean, it's necessary to
Yeah.
have a walkway from a front door attach itself to a driveway in some way, shape, or form. Right? I mean, isn't that the purpose of having a walkway?
yeah, what if you called this
So
a
the
patio?
intersection would be
Right.
allowed. Just, it's not,
Good night, Sally.
Am I grandfathered in? That's all I want to know.
No, it's too late.
Something with my
no, yeah.
Suppose you called this a patio
It's a
Or terrace.
or terrace. Yeah, a patio. This is not a driveway, it's a paved
Slap
patio.
that.
At what point
I'm
did the
serious.
meeting
I said
become
we-
non-constructive?
About now.
No, it is, I understand.
What is the definition of a driveway right now? I can't remember.
We,
But it was-
I don't believe, well, no, I think we
There
do
was
define
one.
it
We
for
do, and
ingress and
there's
egress.
also, yes, and there's also a parking
We can wear 'em
requirement
out.
about parking in designated areas. It's a part of the parking code that we adopted last.
I looked it up and
The other thing is, can we limit a walkway abutting a driveway to 2 feet, not greater than 2 feet in width? so that we don't have the,
Is that, would that satisfy whatever it's called?
ADA
Yeah.
That's my only,
Well,
that's my.
Yeah.
You could adopt that
couple people.
regulation. If someone asked for a reasonable accommodation, you would have to grant it.
that's not wide enough for a wheelchair.
So
Or a stroller.
could we,
Uh,
a double wide?
But I'm not saying that the town of Chevy Chase limits the walkway to 2 feet. They're saying if the walkway is 2 feet or closer to the driveway, it's considered part of the driveway for
Right.
calculation of the width.
Yeah.
But you can have a walkway as wide as you want as long as it's 2 feet away. And it
All right, but
won't
then
be-
you have people building meandering walkways across their front yards
Yeah.
just in order to accomplish getting a walkway to their driveway.
Well, I think the walkway to the driveway might be different than, a walkway along the driveway. It is common to have a walkway from the front door to the drive. I don't know how common it is to have a walkway running the whole distance of the driveway.
One of the options we discussed was whether to eliminate this entirely and rely solely on the 30% non-vegetative surface and let people decide how they want to use their 30%.
That's an idea. Because as I was saying,
Well, that,
suppose a resident says this is a patio. How are we going to say this is not a
there's some
patio?
lots that are really wide,
Yeah,
so that would allow for a very,
a double wide driveway.
and that does not preserve the,
right,
What'd you
if you
say?
look at the landing
Character of the
field
village,
at the
thank you.
corner of Raymond and,
But there are two driveways.
right, yeah, that abut,
Yeah.
that, it looks like an airplane runway.
Yep.
That's what you say.
It's fantastic for children.
It is.
I'm sure it is, but,
It actually transforms that into a playground.
It does.
So the question, that's a good question. Do we want to regulate the width
Yes.
at all?
yes, we do.
How, on a wide, what's a wide lot? Do we have 70 feet lots?
Yes.
60-foot lots?
well, most are 50.
Well, most
lots
are
are
50, but
wider.
Raymond has one that's 75.
At the bottom,
No, it's in the middle.
Some are 2.
yeah.
I believe the county requires at least 50 feet.
50, yeah, the
For the
smallest are
R90
50.
zone. I can't tell you what's
Yeah.
common.
Anyway,
So what's the downside of adopting the staff recommendation again?
I don't see any.
You're allowing driveway width to be widened.
I think that
But we can, so are we
That's not a
saying that it can be up to 12 feet? Or are we not limiting the width of the walkway?
We're not limiting
Because if
it.
we're not limiting, then the downside is that you can make the walkway.
So how about this? We take the staff recommendation and add a limit to the width of the walkway to the maximum allowable ADA compliant
Do we know what
width.
that is? Anyone have any?
Well, we could base it on a wheelchair standard, but not a general ADA standard.
Okay, but
it depends on the circumstances of the applicant.
Are you, Mr. Engineer, would you be good with a wheelchair standard for the width of a walkway?
How about a ramp?
Mr. Attorney, are you good
Yeah,
with
I
that?
think that's a good solution.
So that addresses the driveway width
I mean,
issues?
assuming everyone's comfortable with, you
Yeah.
recognizing there is a policy need to have a walkway from the street to the house right next to the driveway.
I
And
believe in some
some-
cases there are.
Right, that the way the land is contoured,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
required.
Yeah,
Do you want to include a definition of a driveway to eliminate the patio situation?
that's an issue.
Because
yeah.
I didn't see one in here.
No,
No,
In either-
it
either
is in,
section.
it's in the traffic code, but not in the, but I thought, wasn't one of our
There's something about
technical
parking in the
corrections supposed
traffic code, yeah.
to duplicate that definition in the building
So,
code?
but Katja,
Art,
I
does
didn't
it,
see it in
Can you
6 or
explain what
7.
your concern is more? 'Cause I'm not sure.
my concern is that somebody could redefine what this is, and it would be unconstrained.
make it a patio.
Make it a patio.
Right, put a
Driveway is a
table out and an
patio.
umbrella and say,
It's
it's
a
not a
patio.
walkway.
Well, yeah,
So
I
I'm
mean,
drawing
that's,
a,
Driveway.
that's, that's always a risk.
Right.
But we do have discretion as the administrative agency charged with enforcing our own regulations to reasonably interpret them. And of course,
There's a car there, there's a car sitting there, there's oil stains.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Okay.
so does my suggestion
Yes.
address everybody's concerns?
Perfect.
Then what was it again?
We define driveway to a specific width and purpose. We allow for a walkway to a butt that is
Different
wheelchair
material.
width, and the engineer will talk to the lawyer
But it still
about that.
conforms to the non-vegetative
Right,
status
right.
requirements.
And the walkway will also have to be of a different material.
Right.
This is the first time, I believe, just as we're all aware, the first time I believe we're dictating material usage.
Well, not specific material, just different.
But we are dictating that there has to be some sort of difference in material usage. We don't dictate whether or not you use certain products for your house.
Well, and that's a good point. With a limitation on how wide the adjoining walkway can be, you could eliminate the material issue. Do you really care?
Yes.
Visually.
To preserve the
Visually.
aesthetic character of the village, we care.
Yeah.
Because the
Yes.
asphalt
And you have
walkway-
to make the finding that it is a character issue and not an aesthetic issue. We're not the taste police. but
What's the difference?
I don't understand the difference.
because it's a
Could you
it's a
define
very,
for us the
it's a
difference?
very fine line. So, in adopting our building regulations,
Right,
Yes.
Yeah.
we have limited authority to regulate the design
Aesthetics, yeah.
of construction, including mass, scale, height, lot coverage.
Yeah.
But case law also tells us we're not the design police. We
Yeah.
cannot say you can't have blue doors.
What if you worded it so to say, in order to differentiate it from the driveway, it has to be a different material? And that's not aesthetic, that's just a definition.
Right,
Or they could say, or
I'm
com-
saying we need to demonstrate that there's a reasonable
Right.
nexus from a policy standpoint between our regulation and what it is we're trying to accomplish.
Can't use the
So
same.
what are we trying to accomplish? We're preserving the character of the neighborhood
Yes.
and the uniformity of
Driveway width.
the
Yes.
streetscape
Well, that's like
based on
the
driveway width.
established
So-
building line is that sort of thing, isn't it? You're,
Can you rely on the same thing that you relied on for the building code?
Yeah, let me think about that one.
Okay.
Okay.
good. One last complication, could somebody come in and say, we will accomplish all that by doing something if somebody suggested painting it a different color?
No, because the material will be the
I
same.
know, but if they're saying maintaining the character, it's not one uniform thing, we have yellow. Well,
I mean, yeah, it may be fair to say that the driveway width standard in combination with the non-vegetative front yard coverage standard also accomplishes the goal of preserving green space in the front yard, which I think is something we articulated with the 2009.
But we wanted uniformity is desirable for the community.
Mhm.
Like the whole front garage door, only one of a certain width is permissible.
Yeah, let me think about that one. That
Okay.
one is.
okay, moving on. All right, what's
you.
next?
That's it under building regulations.
Okay.
So the next step would then be to draw up an ordinance and circulate it for your discussion. And once you get it to a state that you're happy with, we'll introduce it for public consumption.
So could I have a goal of if Ron's able to draw it up, we're able to review it electronically, that it could be introduced in November? Because that gives people the holiday time to review it, because I don't think we're going to have the required time between
30
November
days
and
between November and December, yeah.
So it gets us into January, and if we decide we want to give people more time, we have the discretion to do that, correct?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So,
And also keep in mind that before the public hearing, we have to give the county council 30 days notice. So sometimes that means we might have to send it to them a couple days before our meeting based on our meeting schedule.
my recommendation is just so that if the sooner we introduce it, the sooner we can put it up
Start
on the
working on
website, give residents the opportunity to review it. If we keep talking about it, it's going to continue to be in our binders and not out for resident review and comment.
Okay, so if we allow for the ADA width of the walkway, right?
Mhm.
So we're talking about probably at least a 14-foot wide covered area that is driveway plus walkway. This is going to be at least 4 feet wide for a building. Are we okay with that? I still like the idea of having it separate, just altogether separate, not attached.
But not every,
But not every landscape allows for that.
But then they can,
For a variance.
apply for a variance if there's a reasonable explanation as to why they could get it, right?
Yeah, that's why the variance process is there. I know this is a tough one. I could draw it up both ways and you can decide later.
Susan.
How common has this, I mean, this is essentially it.
We've seen 2 in the last month come up.
2 in 1 month.
Yeah, and I would expect a lot more because the village has been lucky. Since 2009, with the economic downturn, we haven't seen a whole lot of development requiring variances. I would expect a great increase
But
going
last year,
forward.
there was a lot of construction.
Well,
Construction revived last year.
So is it possible to draft up both?
sure.
Thank
Okay.
you. Okay, so let's move on.
So we can have that discussion via email. We'll make a decision via email about what we want to be introduced. Is that
Richard will
acceptable?
rule with a hammer. Okay, we're deciding.
Sure, we're decided. Okay.
Just for one thing for clarification, one of the situations wasn't even construction, it was just resurfacing of a driveway. So there was no house construction involved. So that can be,
That was the one on
you can have a lot of those.
Shepherd.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can have a lot of those without any construction at all.
Right, right.
And we wouldn't know about those until after the fact if we don't do something.
Okay. Can we move on?
Yes, sir.
Streetlights.
All right, so street lights. I read through a lot of the documentation that we've had accumulated over the years. Some of it was going back to 1999, believe it or not. But in the last 6 or 7 years, there's been most actions taken.
Thank you.
Are you done with me too?
Do we have to do anything on streetlights?
No.
No, I'm just
No.
proposing action items forward, but
But we
Okay.
don't need the attorney for that, do we?
I
Okay.
don't think so.
Good night.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night.
Good night, thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Don't forget, you're losing an hour.
Doug could still present his
Oh,
building
okay.
report.
God, did you mind if Doug does a building
No,
report
not at all.
before we do the streetlights?
Okay.
I guess if you're letting him go.
Yeah.
You're welcome to stay. I'm sure that you found this all.
He wants to follow Ron out to start picking his brain now.
Yeah.
Actually, it is interesting to be on this side for a change. I'm usually sitting where he is, so it's a little more relaxing actually. But thanks again.
Thank
Look forward to
you.
working with you
Nice
all.
to meet you.
Doug, do you want to do
Yeah,
your
you might as
report
well.
and then?
Is that okay?
Yeah. Of course. Thank you. Good night.
Exactly.
Actually, I do that.
I guess you have it in the back of your packet.
There were
Under
seven.
tab 6, first item on 6.
On Bradley Lane, the construction of the front porch has been completed, and there was no bond for that. I don't believe there's no bond being replaced, or it has been replaced, I'm sorry. On Cummings Lane, that's the new garage and driveway. Excuse me?
Yeah, I hear them every morning.
I think 3414 Cummings is interesting because we've gotten two neighbors asking about the retaining walls, which gets to the policy discussion we were having. The answer was yes, they have a permit for the retaining wall. No, there is no limit on where that retaining wall can be placed.
Or there's
So
no
it's been-
control over them moving it,
Directly relevant to 3414 Cummings.
Okay.
but it is under construction.
Okay.
On Chestnut Street and Shepherd Street, both of those have been completed and the performance bonds have been returned to the applicant. On Dellfield, that was the one that we just saw in the driveway, with the sidewalk next to the driveway. That's pretty much been completed. There was a conflict because a terrace and a grading was in the backyard that was not on the sediment control plan, so we asked the applicant to submit new signed sediment control plans, and they have. They're now in the file.
That was in Novak's backyard?
No.
No, that's on
Oh.
Dellfield.
Okay.
Novak's was just Chestnut. On Quincy, they applied for a permit for a deck and a fence, and that work has begun. On Raymond Street, That's one where the county issued a permit, and we saw the sign in the front yard, notified the county and the applicant, the architect, and their contractor that they needed a village permit, and we haven't heard back yet. I don't believe, no.
Where's 3505 Raymond? Whose house is that?
Mike's, the Conleys.
Huh?
The Conleys.
Okay, down, I
But
was
the
up
good
too
news
high.
is there might be a pirate ship still there this Halloween.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they weren't gonna move out until December.
Okay, 3513 Raymond.
That was the one we, I think, discussed last month, where
Right.
they had built the steps that it encroached into the side yard. I met with the applicant, he's agreed to take them down.
They're working on it.
Well, he sent me an email today saying it was done, so I went and measured it, and I'm not sure it still complies, or that it does comply.
Huh?
He had to reduce it to 72 inches, and I measured 75 inches. So we still got a 3-inch discrepancy. So I'll contact him tomorrow and let him know where we stand. On the other Raymond Street, they're doing internal improvements to the building.
What happened to the white fence?
Oh, I'm sorry. Ron put together a license agreement, or is putting together
Right-of-way
the
license
agreement.
agreement.
Right-of-way license agreement for
Okay.
the applicant to sign.
Okay, got it.
On the other Raymond Street, they requested a dumpster permit, which has been issued. On
So how
Turner.
come there's no tree protection there? Is there no trees?
I don't
there's
know,
a
I'm not
tree.
the tree person.
Have to ask Wayne about that, I don't know.
Okay.
The dumpster permit, you're asking why doesn't the dumpster permit trigger tree
Yes,
protection?
because I know that when we did our renovation,
Yeah.
it did trigger that.
Okay.
Was it from, where did it come from? Did it come from the building administrator?
I
I mean, did
don't
I miss
know.
it?
No, it was before your time.
No, but did I miss it? Did I miss this one?
No, it's 3525.
I think we've not discussed tree protection protocols since we've started, have we?
Well, it does mention that you have to put up silt fence to protect the trees under certain circumstances, but I'm not sure
Yeah,
dumpsters
they're
work.
not disturbing any land. You weren't disturbing any land either.
We weren't, but we were told that because we have a dumpster,
They had to put it
we
up.
had to put up the tree protection.
I'll look into it.
Okay.
On Turner, we have a hearing next week.
Oh, yeah, right.
We can ask you no questions until that hearing, is that correct?
It's my understanding.
Okay. Great,
And
I'll
then-
ask them all
I
next
mean,
week.
it's I don't believe you can,
Okay, it's
and I
fine.
can't answer any questions.
So
Well, it's good,
November
I'm not
5th is
gonna ask
not
you
next week.
anyway.
No, it's in a
Sorry.
couple of weeks.
Right, until that
November
hearing, the
5th.
5th, yes, sorry.
On Oxford Street, there was a sump pump that was tying into an inlet in the right-of-way. The work's been completed and the bond's been released. And that's it.
So how are you settling in? Broader question than this.
I think, for the new stuff, I think fine. Cleaning up the old stuff has been a little bit of a burden to try to figure out what's been done and where it needs to wrap it up. But
Okay.
I think I'm all right. You?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ron and I briefly talked about this going forward, we'll get this larger ordinance amendment introduced, but then the idea would be you guys might keep a running list that maybe in June of every year there could be a building permit cleanup as needed, so that we don't nickel and dime you every month, but that there's a clear, okay, if we find something throughout the year that needs attention, then we'll say we're going to do this in June. It's an example month. No one else has agreed to that. So that it could be actually addressed, and then we don't end up with 10 things to address at once. It's one or two.
Well, we spent 2 or 3 hours one day going through that whole file, looking at what was active and what had been closed. So I think we're pretty much caught up right now.
Great.
One other thing Tori asked me to do, and I'm working on it, is update some of the forms that we've been using. And one of the ones you had mentioned was the permit on Chestnut that we had a controversy over or confusion over. So I'm going to be rewording that to make it more specific, that it's besides the right-of-way, it also is tied to the on-lot construction. so that we don't have confusion later.
Tori had mentioned possibly doing separate permits, a demolition permit, a construction permit, and is that?
You have that now. You have a demolition permit and a construction permit.
I think we were thinking like one permit for complete knockdown
Yes.
rebuilds, which is the $4,000 fee and encompasses everything. Another that's for more modest renovations, because right now it's one form that's supposed to apply to all of these things. So you can get someone filling out a fence permit, and it's like 4 pages
So if
long.
that's what you guys think is the best path forward, then does it make sense to start working on that now instead of updating what we have or clarifying what we have?
I put it on hold until you all decide on what things you want me to inspect or not, like walls, fences and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't see any point in putting that on the
Yeah,
form
right,
if it's coming
right.
off.
Okay.
Right.
So that's on my
We
list
do think
as
the
a whole.
variance application as it is should be updated now,
Yes.
to be clearer what we need.
And is there I think there was at one time, I don't know if it's disappeared, like a one-page instruction to residents, if you're thinking of doing construction, here's what you have to do. Here are
There are various things on the website.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the website, the section on building and permitting is hard to navigate. It's
Yeah.
hard to get to the essence of what you need to know.
Right.
I think it needs work, and yes, there's probably a form like that, and it may be a few tabs down and
Or not
brought
even a
to the
form,
top,
just
or, I mean, I shouldn't
like
say
the
form.
thing that's at the
Yeah.
very top. Here's
Yeah.
what you need to know.
Kind of Tori's list, which she showed us
Okay.
on the spreadsheet, that here's the steps in the process.
Right.
And I think getting the steps in the process public, we talked about it was a good idea. It's a
We have been talking about
workload.
even amongst ourselves, making sure
Change it every
we
day.
understand.
One thing that we're discussing and we're probably going to recommend is that the first step would be come in here and meet with us. So that to make sure that they know there's a code and what they have to follow and not rely on the website or somebody else. The first step would be a pre-construction meeting or pre-design meeting. And we talked about that a long time ago.
Thank you.
It's probably the fastest road for everybody. I mean, in terms of, yes, if they decide not to build, it's sort of a free counseling service. On the other hand, if they decide to build, you don't spend hours and hours and hours redoing everything.
Right. Or they
So
didn't-
I
they
think
didn't
in
know.
the end, we come out ahead.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you.
Okay, meanwhile, back at electricity, no, lights.
Okay. All right, so back to lights.
Nice compilation.
Thanks. All right, so we have approximately 80 poles with lights on them. They're mostly incandescent lights. They are an old technology, and there are letters from Pepco saying that eventually in the near future, it will be discontinued, so we will no longer be able to replace the lights that we currently have. So that is the reason for the main driver for why we really should be replacing lights soon.
Which I think is a good thing you highlight, Katja, because there are residents who have questions about why
Yeah.
we're undertaking a street light.
But the ones who aren't screaming that we don't have enough light are also saying, why are we doing this?
So secondly, the incandescent light bulb is very inefficient, and all of the new technology that's out there, it doesn't matter which one, they're all far more efficient than what we have today. So in theory, this could result in us saving money on electricity. However, that's theory, because currently they do not have a separate tariff.
Pepco is really running behind.
But eventually, they're going to get there, and when they do, we should start saving money on electricity.
Right, okay.
So what work has been done to date? We have discussed this since 1999. In the last 6 or 7 years, there's been more work done. We have a lighting consultant, Scott Watson, that has performed a study on the lights that we have, created a map of where we have all the lights, what kind of lights they are, and made recommendations. About 2 years ago, there was a presentation that he made with his recommendations. And that resulted in installation of 2 sample lights on Bradley Lane last summer.
Just to clarify, that presentation was made just to the council at the time, the manager and maybe 1 or 2 residents. So for people who may say, where's the result of that? It was a very small presentation.
So I specifically tried to keep all of the noise out of this report to make it concise, so just keeping the kind of most critical information in there. It's very important to understand what lights are in the surrounding jurisdictions. So the main thing here is that we're the last jurisdiction with incandescent lights. That means that everybody else is on different lights. They most have upgraded to mercury vapor lights that have then been ruled by EPA that they can no longer be made. So that forced these jurisdictions that have upgraded to switch with time. So not all at the same time, but as they were burning out, they were switching to high pressure sodium lights.
Okay.
High pressure sodium lights are very common. They're the orange lights you see absolutely everywhere.
Okay.
They are the kind of the basic light. However, even though they put out a lot of lumens, most people see it as a very dark light.
It doesn't render colors accurately.
And it looks orange, and some residents actually complained that they do not want to see high pressure sodium lights because they feel like it's tied to high crime areas and etc. So anyway,
interesting.
Village, Town of Chevy Chase and Section 3 both have them and both try to move away from them. So I think that should give us an idea of that's probably not what we want to go with.
Right.
The reason why neither one of them have actually replaced them is because they're already on this efficient system. So the high pressure sodium they don't look good, but they're very efficient. But it costs a lot of money to change the lights. So there's no savings, and they're still being made, so there's no pressure to replace them. However, it would cost as much as it would cost for us to upgrade. So that's why they're still on them, even though they're not happy with them. Okay? Moving on. So I've grouped it into 4 different options. First is the high pressure sodium. The pros are that it's a standard light, so Pepco can supply it. It is widely used. It provides a high lumen output, but this is one of those things that technically it provides a lot of lumens, but people don't feel like they see very well with those lights. So it's kind of a pro, but questionable.
It's what you find in parking lots.
No, actually it's not. Well, so orange glow appears dark. There's plenty of complaint letters in there saying that we do not want these in our village in the decks that I've read. Okay. Most jurisdictions are also unhappy with them, and so I've already talked to that. Okay. LED lights. So these are the 2 lights that we have on Bradley Lane. One of them is 38 watt and one of them is 55 watt. They're also standard, and at this moment they appear to be the light of the future. Why am I saying that? Because, over 5 years ago it wasn't clear if it's going to be LED or induction. So we don't know, it could shift. But right now it appears like this is where the market is going. The downsides are that it provides blue light. This is actually what you find in the parking lots in much higher wattages. In a lot of mall parking lots that appear very bright, that's LED lights. And they have a very high glare. It's the highest glare of all lights on the market.
Well, Scott could tell us that, but I thought the shielding could deal with that.
It helps somewhat, but the actual light is the only glary one of the options, right? The LED are the glary lamps. That's a new technology, so hopefully with years they will come up with something that is less glary, but we don't know that, right? This is just speculation.
Well, one typo at the bottom of there should be 3,000 degrees, not lumen.
Okay, so
it's the light color temperature.
So it's the temperature change, so I'll update that. But basically, the incandescent lights that we have now are 2,800 degrees, and they appear soft white. So it's kind of a good measure of where we want to be. The blue ones that are in parking lots are 5,000 degrees, and that's why they're so blue. You can tune LEDs to 3,000, which is fairly close, and that's what the 2 ones on Bradley are. So if we were to choose these, we would ask
Where on Bradley are they?
Close to Brookfield,
Right
the
in
first
from the
two.
The
corner.
first two, yeah.
In front of the Simons.
side.
So the
Okay.
very
Pockets,
first
like
one
next.
is 55 watts,
Okay.
and it's angled down,
Yeah.
not completely down, it's like a second level.
Right.
And then the second one in, so closer to the middle of the block,
Right.
is 38 watts, and it's angled further this way.
Into the roadway.
It's the beginning of the pitch
Right.
downhill.
Okay.
Which is interesting, because to me they almost look like they're the same brightness because of the angling. So just look at it, okay? Lastly, the induction, so LED lights, 70 plus wattages. So this is important to note because in the study that the town did, the installations that they did are mostly the LEDs that are 70 plus. They're either 70 watts or 100 watts. And that's not necessarily useful to us because the streets in the town are far wider. I mean, some of them are
The
4
village
times as
or
wide.
the town?
It's a town.
Okay.
Or maybe it's the village. Is it the village?
Village, yeah,
I always
village,
confuse
yeah.
the
I know.
Village. Code.
Yeah.
It's the one with a lot of money.
Yeah.
Village.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is just historically, you know, like we used to be the workmen's.
Right.
Anyway, so they have far wider streets, so they need higher wattages lamps.
Right.
So they have in that pilot program only 70 and 100 watts. So that doesn't really apply to us because it would spread light into the houses because our streets are so much narrower, right? And they're obviously much brighter. They're even more glary, but they're also standard, and so they're also provided by Pepco. Induction light. Induction lights are as efficient as LEDs. They used to go on par, and then they started losing the market share. That's their con.
Well, they also went out of production, except for one factory. Philips was making them, and they stopped making them. But the factory in the Netherlands, the factory was bought by somebody else, and that was one of the
Is that
supply
what they currently
issues.
have?
No, we do not have induction lights.
That's what we wanted to
They
get.
have a 20-year lifespan. So
Okay.
this is not like the incandescent lights that we have that have to be replaced
Okay.
every 6 months.
Twice a
This is,
year.
you know, a 20-year lifespan. So in 20 years, we'll probably have to upgrade regardless of what we choose.
Yeah.
Whether it's LEDs to less glary, more modern option, or these we'll have to convert if we choose induction.
But it sounds from what you're saying, Arthur, is we better buy them quick.
Yeah, that was the issue. That was
Not
what,
necessarily. So,
Well, that
I
was
mean,
the
at least
issue.
not from Scott Watson coming, right? So,
Yeah.
Scott recommends induction the most.
Yeah, that's what
have
we were
them
going to do.
In Garrett Park,
When it was
all
last
over their
night.
town. They have
Okay.
a sample on Georgia Street in Section 3.
Mm-hmm.
So this is on the block between Bradley and Raymond,
Okay.
right in the middle of the block, is one, you can see it's different, it's not orange, is one induction bulb. It is 55 watts, so perfect wattage for our streets. And it is also 3,000 degrees. So again, it's not too blue, it's not too orange, and it's so the light is, the
It's
spread
very
of light
nice
is
light.
very nice light. And yeah, it is, I wanted to say something else about it. Soft white, yes. So anyway, I like that one a lot, but the LEDs are also good options. So what I'm recommending for next steps, we have spent a lot of time looking and researching this.
Right.
Really, when it comes down to it, if we take into consideration the Dark Sky Initiative recommendations and the narrowness of our streets and the fact that everybody hates the high-pressure sodium, we really only have a couple of options here.
Right.
So once we get the pricing, at this point we expect the pricing to come out about even, but
Right.
we don't know.
Even with the LED and the induction?
Yes.
Right.
So until we get the actual pricing, we don't know, but that's the gut feeling that Scott has. I was hoping that we'll have the pricing by this meeting, but we don't. So once we do receive that, what I'm proposing is that prepare the material similar to this, like nothing, you know, with 50 pages
Right.
and way too much information. So the council reviews it, we send out a survey to the village, open for 1 week, same information. So if people choose to participate, they can. If they choose not to participate, that's fine, and then we'll make the decision just on what type of a light. So LED or induction first,
Right,
and then we take a second step, knowing already the fixture.
right.
What kind of shape do we want? Do we want the teardrop like that? Or there's 2 or 3 different styles. So again, we can provide the information, we can provide the pictures, we can send a week-long survey to the residents. They can participate or not participate, doesn't matter.
But can we only have one style?
Yeah.
I mean, because, like, would you
For
want one style for near intersections, but different styles
So
down the
you're
street?
talking about the guts of it, right?
No, well, I don't know, what is it you're talking,
I
you're
don't-
talking about the shape?
I'm talking about...
The luminaire.
Right, the luminaire. Like, this one looks like it's gonna whiz all over, and can we just have, something that might, be...
We could have the same style, but we could have different wattages in there
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
Different heights.
Right?
So Scott could make recommendations based on
Yeah.
dark patches.
Perfect.
This is the power of the light that
Right.
you need, but the fixtures that surround it could be uniform. Is that what you're
Right,
saying?
exactly. Yes, so they could.
And that's what we would prefer.
I would think so.
And there was also the possibility, you had mentioned, of instead of using the utility pole, which constrains where you put the lights, having our own poles,
So
which
our
is a
own
very
poles
different,
could be.
that's a different
They could
pole
look
wax
differently. This could be
altogether.
not the waxed wood pole, but actually, those metal ones
There's all
that.
kinds of possibilities
Yeah.
once you start
Yeah,
looking.
once you start looking at that, though, we have to. There's
there's
a
Budget.
additional budget.
Right, there's the
implication.
cost.
So I asked him how much is a pole.
Yeah.
He told me
More
that.
surveys.
I'm sorry.
More surveys to discuss stuff.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
what
So we
is
can. It could be one of the questions, right? What he told me just initially is that it's $2,500 per pole, and there's 80 poles in the village.
$2,500 buys the pole and the electricity that we would have to run to it.
Well, then, see, that's other questions.
That's
Running the
another question,
electricity.
and that's the thing, that when the whole pricing thing comes out,
Yeah.
there's going to be follow-up
Right.
questions too. But again, I
So
think that
that's
we
$200,000, is that right? 80 times 2,500?
yeah.
Okay.
Katya, this is,
Incredible.
3 pages of breakdown of all of the information you went through, I think is fantastic, and I think it drives us to a couple of decision-making points, which is helpful. I like the idea of choosing the light and the fixture separately.
That's the one thing that when I read through all the documents, that's what people get bogged down with. There's too many decisions to make at the same time. You have to break it down.
Right.
Sorry.
What was I going to say? Well, I forgot. Continue.
Well, may I ask a question
Sure.
about the glariness? Is it, does it have any safety impacts as far as?
It
For driving,
could. So
for
people
driving.
could see it differently.
Oh, I know, that's what I was
So
gonna say.
interestingly, when we looked at the same light, and there could be various reasons for this, we see light differently, everybody does. I was very much bothered by the glare, but Tiffany was not.
Yeah. And it depends if you're walking versus driving in a car.
Right.
And there's a difference
That's a
between
difference.
looking, if you're looking straight ahead and just seeing the light on the
On the
ground
street, on the
level
road, yeah.
versus I'm looking up at the light
Yeah.
and looking at the light
Right,
fixture
right.
itself.
All these, and the other thing, here's what I was going to say is, there are LEDs going in all over the country. I'm kind of shocked at how few options we have here. I don't know whether it's Scott Watson or Pepco or Holophane who we choose to work with, who are supplying this, but you go look through the literature, there's city after city installing this.
But it's usually, from what I've read at least on all the reports, it comes down to the same thing. So it's either over 70 watts,
Yeah.
right? They're just wider
But
streets.
Scott was unhappy with the particular design of the fixtures, of the way the LEDs, there could be like 40 separate little LED lamps in it, how they're laid out, how the lensing was on the street level, the distribution of light. I thought this stuff should have been solved by Cleveland or somebody else years ago.
There are several vendors. I mean, when I was at the MML conference this summer,
Yeah,
Holophane is
Holophane's
one
there.
vendor. There were at
And
least
we got this
3
from
or
Hall of
4
Fame.
others who do sell LED options. I think Katja's kind of narrowed down some of the options for us based on a lot of the historical comments, which is helpful since...
Well, here's a little concern. I'm wondering how broadly Scott is looking at suppliers and designs, or whether he's tied to Hall of Fame somehow.
No, I've asked him that. That was one of my first questions.
Okay. What did he say?
And he said that they're kind of similar in what they provide. So there's nothing out there that by a different supplier that is drastically different.
Is Hall of Fame the mid-road more expensive? Lisa, did he have a comment on that?
Why did they design a special fixture for us? I mean, this is what I don't get.
It sounded like it was reasonable. It wasn't anywhere outstanding. So because I did question him specifically on that. Why does Pepco have to install it? Why are we going with this particular brand? And honestly, if we keep getting delays with getting pricing from Pepco, we really should investigate
another installer.
Yeah. Because we're not tied to Pepco by any means. We could get it installed by someone else.
We have to buy electricity from them, that's all. I mean,
that is the only thing we have to buy from Pepco, that's right.
So couldn't we choose the light, and we could choose the style of fixture, and then
we could bid that out. That's what I was thinking too.
And what was the last thing you said?
And compete it.
Bid it out.
This is the light.
But wait a minute, but on our own poll, can we do that on Pepco polls? I don't know. I think we would have to do we can?
We can.
Put it on Pepco, we could bid it out, own it, and put it on Pepco polls?
Yes.
Would they continue to replace the bulbs after that? Or we would be responsible?
We would be responsible for maintaining them. They have a 20-year lifespan.
Yeah.
Right? So...
Yeah.
But what are the O&M costs in general?
What are the what costs?
Operation and maintenance costs.
And there are sheets that have that in there. So the town, or the village, I guess it's the village, that has made that analysis on there, how much it costs to maintain. They did not look at induction, so it's all LED, but presumably it's probably roughly the same. Their lifespan is certainly the same.
You know what, go over to the village city hall, and they have small poles right around, they're not street lights, but they're small poles lighting up the area right around there.
As I recall.
Yeah, and it's very nice. I remember when we were going around looking at the street lights, and then we said, these are really nice. These are our own, just on our own property.
So what can we...
What's next?
Yeah, what do you need us to do?
So I need to look through, and I'll do it this weekend, my just various emails in terms of who has he talked to at Pepco.
Okay.
Because we need to either escalate it there, or we need to
bid it.
Well, we need to have him ask for other...
we need to get a full set of recipes from him about...
Well, we need to get some kind of numbers for pricing, right? Because we need to make those 2 decisions, and then we bid it out to actually get the lights that we've chosen installed.
So we get prices on the LED and induction.
We're actually getting prices on all of these categories.
Okay.
Tori,
wherever.
Did you have a question?
No. Mike Bacucci at Pepco was the one who called to say, Scott Watson requested, is that okay? Just sort of checking. And then I said, well, if Katja has follow-up questions about the pricing, because he was saying we can't get the pricing to you this quickly. He said that you should reach out to Jerry Pasternak.
But it's been a full month, because I called about the lights as soon as we had the last meeting a month ago.
The Friday after.
The Friday after, I spent the whole day basically on lights, and so but when I asked him to create that 1-sheet document with prices, you've already done that too, I think.
Yes. Oh, asked him? Yeah.
You've asked him first, then I followed up immediately. But my point is, it's been out there for at least a month.
We need to elevate the request.
And we're not the only ones getting LEDs from Pepco.
So the issue is that it's not just LEDs. We need to look at it across the board and make a decision. Do we want to go with induction? Maybe we do. Maybe we want to go with LEDs. So it's getting all of the prices, and it's tuning them to the right thousands of degrees. So the standard lamp that so induction actually is provided by Pepco as well. So it's their standard lamp option. but their standard is 4,000 degrees, and we need 3,000, because 4,000 is below.
Bill Lebovich and I like 4,000. Everyone else likes warm lights.
But look
red.
what happened to Bill.
Yeah.
No.
We were the photographers.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good, it gives us a
I
path
think
to
this
go
is
forward.
incredible.
I mean, Tasha, I don't know how much you want, this almost, why do additional work at this point in time? Why not share this with the residents to say?
Well, I think we send out in the newsletter that we intend to do this, and then we'll follow up whenever the survey comes out. We'll actually have. So
And
I'll
once we
summarize
get
this in a-
prices, we need prices.
Yeah.
We need prices.
Well,
We
but I
need to
mean,
know
even,
about
I would say,
availability. of the
you could
industrial.
send people to look at the lights though without
Right.
having exact prices. Yes, price
If you
factors into our decision
think
making,
that they're
of course.
close, but again, he said that he thinks they're going to be close. But if one of them comes out 30% more expensive, I think that would probably help shape our
Well,
decision.
the problem is you're looking 20 years into the future here of lifetimes of maintenance. How are they going to fail? Whether they're going to be able to actually get them?
At this point, we believe they're comparable.
Yeah, but I think 30% difference looking 20 years out is in the noise level. Because we don't know everyone is projecting these lifetimes, but we really don't know.
Well, so what we can do is, as soon as we've got the new lights up, we can start researching for replacements. Because it takes us 15 years.
20 years.
So,
Does it take that long?
Yeah.
The problem is the technology has been changing so rapidly.
right.
So one thing I
Underneath
also
it.
have to share with you guys, and I think it's important to know, right? So when the village, when they did their pilot, they ran a survey. And they have 2,800 residents that were able to take the survey, look at all these lights and vote on what they
Walk up
want.
and down the street.
They got minimal response.
Yeah, that's what
A couple dozen
Yeah.
out of 2,800 residents.
Right.
So our first survey was better than theirs.
Well, but not for lights. Actually go
But I
and look
think
at
what
the
I'm
lights.
saying is that, we shouldn't, we may get so minimal,
I don't
so
think
we
few
should just keep
responses that we
moving.
will have to make the decision ourselves.
Yeah,
We should be
we will.
comfortable with that.
But
Doesn't merit waiting for.
Right, I
No.
think we need to
And-
keep this
But I
thing
think
rolling.
Yeah.
opening it for the time
Right.
frame, and
Yeah.
not
No, I
just
think it's important to
propose
open it, yes.
That's right. Tell them, ask for a survey,
Right.
tell them it's available, we're going to have to make the decision.
Okay, have you got enough marching orders to move on?
Yes, I think
Okay.
I'll just ask
Can we
you guys.
move on?
We need a treasurer's
Pepco's.
report and then we're done.
Pepco's,
No, we're
No,
not.
we have the manager's report.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
treasurer's
Treasurer's
report.
first, I
Yes.
think, on
Treasurer.
the agenda.
That was,
we're in good shape. Next
Well,
item.
okay, so we exceeded, again, expenses exceeded income by $40,000. The expenses included a lot of professional fees expenses. So, for example, the legal fees were $20,000 over what we normally spend.
right.
And that's because of the code ordinances review, okay?
And we have a variance hearing upcoming.
That was separate, right, so another $7,000 was spent on the permits. I believe it was $7,000. And we budget $2,000, so it was a good increase there too. And I think that's because we had very complicated permit requests this month.
Are we talking about 5,000? Oh, no, we're talking,
Well, I suspect it's a combination of Alan didn't bill very much.
I thought that was all closed out.
It was, but I'm saying
But I
as a
think-
comparison.
Increase
and
based on actual cost versus previous
I see.
invoicing.
And in addition, we're learning afresh and
yeah, it's taking
revising
more
it.
time.
Yeah,
So
right.
I think I want to see the legal fees potentially going down next month because the work on the drafting of the ordinance
And
is
the work
going
on
to be
the
done.
variance to a large extent.
The work on the variance is going to be done.
Okay, so that
So
would be
let's-
good to see.
It's a control for us to look at. What was the waste and recycling increase?
So that
this
looked
month?
like it was twice
I
the
think this is
amount.
an issue of timing of
Yes,
bills.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they both fell into the month of September. This
Okay.
one,
So-
there's a lag in order to
And our
create
contract renewed in
financial
September, right?
controls. it takes longer to process bills here than it does at home, right? So you get the bill in, I send it to Dan, he sends it back, it needs 2 council signatures, I put it in the mail. There's days that lag. So this bill fell into September, and then, so this is dated.
Yeah, 9/2 and 9/27.
Right, it's this way, yeah. September 2nd and September 27th. But this one's for the September service, and this one's for the October service, and it's the same amount.
Okay. And then the tree maintenance was also significantly
There
more.
was a July and an August bill, which never got paid. He sent a very nice, you forgot to pay a bill note. I'm not sure where in the process it fell through, but we paid it. We paid up.
Okay.
So this month we actually had some disbursements. So the income was normal level, but we had just had bigger than normal expenses. So that's why that's it.
And do we need a motion to approve the financial
I believe
reports?
so. I move.
Okay,
So
second.
move to approve.
Second.
Second?
Aye.
I second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, oppose. Okay.
Okay.
Tori, finally.
What
Okay,
tab are we at?
6.
6.
If you could turn to the second item, because we already did the building permit status report.
This
The
is
next-
the Joe Kutra.
Yes, and I put the whole memo in here because it's a very well-written memo. A lot of interesting information, but to give you some highlights. So this is the traffic sign improvement project, which you all decided to proceed with back in the spring. He's now doing that project. He started on Thornapple Street. And he wrote us a memo about what he did on Thornapple Street to kind of give you a taste of what it will be for the whole village. So essentially what's going on is you have traffic signs which are either not in compliance with highway standards, or they're worn out, they're rusty, they're out of plumb, they were mounted too low so someone could bang their head when they're walking their dog, all this stuff.
Oh, Jesus.
And so he's doing, so if you see he went down the street and basically made a list of everything, so graded A through D, all the signs, and to sort of put them in broad categories, one thing is that a standard sign now should be 30 inches, and we have many signs that are 24. An example right behind you is a 30-inch sign. That's a stop sign that should be everywhere, and he thinks this should be done. In addition, there should, at a multi-stop intersection, it should say all-way, like that sign there, and we have these obsolete signs, or even no sign at all.
This wasn't in the email package that you sent out, was it?
No, because he sent this,
Yes.
he gave this to me after I sent that out.
Could you send us a copy?
Of course, I'd be glad to. I think it's a really interesting memo.
Yeah, good for the fun.
Parking control. A lot of the signs need to be replaced anyway because they're worn out, and the essential question is whether to go with those 2 signs. That's the international sign, which is the P, basically no English, and on the left is the more old-fashioned one. Do we want to make a sort of decision to be uniform in one direction or another?
Let's go international. Let's go metric.
That was the direction you guys were going in anyway, and we'll just
Hold on, this thing says the current professional consensus is that the text type sign is better understood and achieves better compliance.
But
While
then
the
he says
international
for
type
Martin's
sign.
Editions, I would recommend settling on the
We have
international
a
type.
very international community.
If for no other reason than the majority of the village's parking prohibition signs are already of this type, so for consistency and...
But if we're putting it up to compel compliance, then why wouldn't we use the one that gets better compliance?
Because we like uniformity.
And we're international.
And we're international.
It's a minor point.
Just
It's
go.
a minor
go.
point. Fire hydrant signs. This is a little bit interesting. Fire hydrant signs over fire hydrants is basically, it's not standard. There's nothing standard about it, and it's not clear why they're there. So a lot of them are worn out, and they're bent. And one option is to remove, and you get an issue of sign clutter as you look down a street. But if it snows, you want to be able to make sure that you can see the fire hydrant. Also, if the fire hydrant's too low, people park in front of it. So you do kind of want to bring attention to it, but there are a lot of alternatives now, like these wires, the colored wires that go up. So it's not a full sign. And I noticed, this is not Joe's issue, but I've noticed that a lot of the fire hydrants kind of need repainting, and we frankly could do something fun, like paint them red and green and yellow, or something like that. Again, none of this is a dire issue, but it does create a streetscape. I mean, I think when you go down a street, first of all, of course, you want all the signs to be safe to maximize traffic safety, but also it creates an impression of a street. And I think when the signs look shabby or they look sort of mixed up, it creates an impression. And even something like what the fire hydrants look like, or extra fire hydrant signs, can contribute to that look. Block numbers on street name signs, I think that's kind of minor. I'll go over that. He pointed out that the village entry signs, which are their white text on green, are really well past their prime and they should be replaced. And he also pointed out that and I've noticed myself, the wooden signs are a little aged as well. This could be an opportunity to think about. So we want to go with kind of a unified theme on all these signs.
We branding.
Exactly.
We need the Village of Martin's Edition brand.
And then the final category are the sign posts themselves. So there's these galvanized poles that are like U-shaped, and they're very strong, and that's kind of been the standard, because it used to be that the green powder-coated or painted ones rusted out right away. But now the new standard is that the new green powder-coated posts are as durable as the galvanized, and they are much less industrial looking. So for example, over in the town of Chevy Chase, they've decided as the galvanized posts need replacing, which they do eventually, you move to the green powder-coated, which they're not any more expensive. You don't replace the perfectly good galvanized ones, but over time you start to change the look of the streets.
Are they differently shaped?
Yes, what's section 3? What have they done?
The green galvanized.
Those are green galvanized for all their street signs.
Just think of the post, not the design holding the street sign at the top. But yeah, the post. It's the same.
Yeah.
And is there a cost difference?
Not anymore. I don't think so. He says the price for powder coated has now fallen below that of galvanized.
Okay.
So he used to recommend against it for rust reasons, but he doesn't anymore. Because they've improved the technology. So over time, through attrition, we'll start to move in a different direction, and I think it'll change the look. So that's that.
So we've approved green,
powder coated.
We've approved international signage over the objection of one person who wants to be local. And what else do we have to approve?
The longer term thing to think about is our signs for our municipality.
Okay.
Because they will need to be replaced, and how.
But we're only approving this to the extent that we're getting a price from Joe saying, here's what we have to do.
So
this isn't carte
for example,
blanche.
this past week, he brought Vergis Construction on Thornapple only, and they moved down the street. Every sign that was out of Plum got put in Plum. Signs that had been mounted too low got put to the standard height, and he would note the stop signs or the all-way signs that will need replacement, and then we'll need to order those and have them put up. So some of it's getting done right away, some of it he'll give us a list and we'll buy it. And
have we got budget money for this project? Is there money in
his time to do this is in the budget. I do not know how much was budgeted for sign replacement.
I'm not sure whether signs come under streets.
We could probably do it under streets, because there probably isn't a category that specifically. Okay, keep going.
The Tree City USA came up in the tree meeting.
Yeah.
Yes,
there was a question about whether or not we have to apply for that.
We don't belong anymore. And the question is, should we be a tree city?
He says there's a similar problem with the village's Tree City USA signs. Damage and old age have caught up with them, although they're generally in better shape than the village entry
there was
signs.
The question that came up in the meeting was, are we still a tree city? Is that something you're supposed to apply for every year?
I don't think we are.
I don't know.
So, I mean, in the interest of less sign clutter, we could just take them down.
Yeah.
They were a favorite of many people like that.
All right, I won't touch them.
No, I just...
Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is sidewalks and curbs and road repair. This week, on Monday, I met with Dan Shaw. He owns Chamberlain Construction, who's done road repaving with us before. we took a walk through the neighborhood, and we specifically used Quincy Street as an example. We walked all the way to the end. We talked about the patches that are there from utilities, and it was an interesting conversation because one of the things he said is if you have 3 different contractors look at the same street, they're going to give you 3 different recommendations about what you could do. He himself was saying you could do a full milling, you could do an edge milling, which is where you mill at the edges, but you build more up in the middle, and this is less expensive. It kind of rounds it up in the middle, but it works fine, etc. In the big picture, one thing to keep in mind is we're talking about concrete work, which is sidewalks and curbs, and we're talking about asphalt work, which is the roads themselves. He said that asphalt work needs to happen in warm weather. He's already booked for October, and by November it's iffy if he would do it. Some of the asphalt plants even shut down for the winter. However, the asphalt is the thing you do second. And what you can do concrete work well into the winter, because as concrete sets, if you put a blanket on top of it, it generates heat and warms itself. So that concrete work could begin now into the winter, and in any case it needs to be done first, because if you see the pictures that Wayne has taken of the sidewalks and the curbs, like you would want to do, for example, the first picture on the top is an example on Quincy Street, I believe, of where there used to be a tree, and the tree was taken out, and there's this big gap in the concrete, and the asphalt is also breaking away. This is because at the edge of the asphalt is soft, and in some ways that's a benefit, but what you need a hard concrete to keep it in place. So you can see that asphalt's breaking away here where there's no concrete next to it. To repave this street, you would start by fixing this curb and gutter.
Right.
That can be done now. Then later you come back and you relay the asphalt.
So does Chamberlain do that work?
They can, yes. Burgess also has done.
This is a significant financial.
Yes.
So this, we need to bid it out.
Yes, we definitely do.
Okay.
The last time there was a lot of work done, there was an RFP. There were 4 bidders. I think it was in 2012.
Right.
And Chamberlain won. They were not the lowest bidder, but they are considered very
I remember the other bidders were running, what's the word? They're not reliable.
And Verges Construction has also done piecework. In other words, if you see these broken up sidewalks, they can, in some cases, you might want to replace, you could just grind down the edge. That's where like precision cutting would come in perhaps. Or you might just replace one square, depending on how big the gap is. If it's a narrow enough gap, you can patch it. If it's big enough, you need to cut out that square and replace it. In some cases, we might say, okay, it's cracked, but page 3 shows a one that would want to be ground down because it's a tripping hazard.
Right.
But there might be cases where we say, you know what, it's cracked, but we're not going to worry about it. I mean, we kind of have to make a decision about how much we want to spend on this.
So how are you recommending we go forward?
I think that we should document, as Wayne is now documenting the tripping hazards.
Right.
Defined as...
And the curb things.
Yes.
We have documented tripping hazards from Precision, right? They gave us a list of every place in the village.
I'll talk to Wayne about that. When did they do that?
Before they gave us the bid, so last
March,
spring.
April was it?
All right.
And they never did it?
That email.
No,
Because
it
we
was
did not-
expensive. We didn't go.
We had a
decide.
discussion in a meeting about we would have to tell them what level we want them to grind down to. There were several options.
And also, did we need a bid?
Which Ron said in a meeting, we did need a bid.
Because it's big. It's all this stuff.
Yeah, but there's only a handful of companies that do it. Like there's one.
They came very highly recommended, etc. It doesn't matter. We need a bid.
Right.
All right. So where did this leave me? What specs would we put? So there's the sidewalk and curb repair. Then there's the road repair. After talking to Dan Shaw, I said, "What? How do you proceed with this?" And he said, "Well, you could just ask different road repairers, what would you give us a bid for repairing this road, but it's going to be difficult. You're not going to be comparing apples to apples because typically people will give you very different suggestions about how much milling they think needs to happen. Arthur Alexander suggested I call Ed Stelfox. Arthur and Wayne took a class.
Not Gene.
And Gene, all of you took a class.
A whole bunch of engineers from DC. He's over at University of Maryland.
Right.
He's the co-director of the Maryland Transportation Technology Transfer Center or something to that name. And basically he teaches at Maryland. Yes, Arthur's a Rhodes Scholar. And Ed Stelfox said he would be willing to give us advice on what he thinks our milling needs are. Now I'm not talking about sidewalks and curbs here, I'm talking about the road replacement itself. Because it's going to take us some time to figure out exactly how much road repaving we need, and that's a good thing because we can't do it till the spring anyway when it gets warm.
So who's doing the stuff on Raymond?
That's WSSC repairing. So I asked Dan for a ballpark estimate.
Right, I saw those.
It's about $1 million.
Yeah.
That's for what? For what?
For a full 2-inch mill and pave. And an allowance for some undercutting and speed bumps.
Is that what he recommends?
Not necessarily, not on every street.
Yeah.
No. But I was like, give me some sense of this. And this
So
is
why would we not go out and ask bidders to say, we want a recommendation for, list the streets. You provide your recommendation for what you would do on this street, this street.
Well, but what about doing what, we've got the University of Maryland guy coming who can tell us.
So Ed Stelfox said, if you send me pictures, please have Wayne take pictures of some of the roads you're thinking about, and I will look at the pictures and I will come by and I will give you my suggestion. I mean, I think this is a good place to start.
Right.
Actually, there's a whole set of algorithms that they use about what you need, how, like the cracking, the subsidence, all sorts of things.
Right, so let's get him started with that.
He does it for free.
Sometimes when you look down a street and you see a patch, it looks different than the asphalt next to it, but structurally it's perfectly fine. There's no reason to repave this street. It just doesn't look as nice as when you have and you might even be able to do it if it's really structurally
What's his time frame for coming out?
Thin veneer of asphalt to give a look, if the look is what you're concerned about, just sort of a smooth ride, but it's not structurally unsound. But like on Quincy, there are whole sections where the asphalt is breaking apart.
Okay, Tori, we have to focus
What
here
is
for
his
a
time
minute.
frame for coming out? Ed Stelfox's.
He didn't give me a specific one. He said send me pictures, so I said, Wayne, please send me
Right.
pictures.
Okay, and on this...
On tree care,
on the curb and sidewalk, what will we do with that?
This is interesting that Precision did it, and now, I don't know, I want to ask you more about that.
Can we do curb and gutter separately?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think we should go with curb and gutter.
Gutter and street are the same. Curb is
different.
No.
Concrete work is done at one time and asphalt separately. You can have somebody come and do it all at once.
I would say contractor bidding work, curb, gutter, street, one project, sidewalk, different project.
Except that the curb and gutter concrete work can be done now.
Yeah, it's a separate item.
In preparation for a later
Yes.
Right, but I would want the same firm to be doing.
Why?
But it's a different material.
It's why,
They're different.
Because if you have somebody who recommends you're going to do one thing for the curb and gutter, and somebody who does something else.
Well, the curb and gutter is a separate function. It's a separate process.
They have to work together. What if we end up with two different recommendations on what to do?
They will match the gutter to where the street is now.
Yeah, they would just be working with an already finished gutter.
It's
going to be smooth.
So the street would. What is done to the street is dictated by what is done to the curb and gutter.
Well, no, not necessarily.
I believe you can bring a machine in that basically takes the asphalt, mills the asphalt right up to the edge of your gutter, and comes right back and puts a new layer of asphalt on, and never needs to touch the gutter. It's a separate machine, and it can be done months separately from.
And because we're not talking about adding another layer of asphalt, we're talking about.
In some areas we might be.
In some areas we might be.
But they can do that even if the gutter's repaired, even if there's a drop off between the gutter and the street. Of course, they'll taper it. we're fine to do curb, gutter, and sidewalk as one concrete project.
But sidewalks actually could be a separate.
Okay,
It could be.
we can do curb and gutter then.
Curb and gutter is part of the street in preparation for asphalt. And then the street and the side, I think these are 3 separate projects.
Do you all want to be part of a walkthrough in the neighborhood? So we sort of,
Sure.
I mean, we've done that.
We got to wear
You
our
all did that in years
construction
past,
hats.
right?
Hmm?
Where we did a walkthrough, where we kind of did an inventory and an assessment.
Let's do it.
I don't know.
You have a Road Scholar t-shirt, don't you?
I have a certificate, I don't have a t-shirt. I want to wear one of those hats.
Okay, all right.
Aubrey, okay.
Very
moving on.
quickly, the very final point is that Dan Gardner, as I mentioned at the very beginning, and Paul Wolf did a walkthrough, a survey of the whole town. They recommend 4 trees for removal, which is going to require state permit from Sabu, and they're recommending these trees be replaced. I understand the process has always been that we contact the residents whose right-of-way would have this tree in front of it to let them know.
Right.
We
I'll
let
do
them
that.
know and that's it.
Yes, unless, yeah.
We don't get to
No,
vote
my
on
decorator doesn't like that. Susan, we hear that all the time. It doesn't go, my decorator says no.
Okay,
I'm done, unless you want to talk about
Okay.
other things.
These are all, wait a minute, there's a ginkgo, that's a small tree, a cherry is small, sweet gum. Zelkova, that's a small tree, isn't it? Take down one maple and one oak.
Yeah, but then look at the
There's big ones.
next day he sent me a different fax.
Oh,
They
Oh.
updated it.
okay. Maple.
So the one that we're doing is the 13th or the 12th? Or both?
Oh, should we take
In
it
some
down?
cases, he was suggesting planting in a place where we are not taking a tree down. It's 2 separate things.
Okay.
There's an overlap.
Okay. So just for, do you have other things in the manager's report?
No.
For the record, we had 2 bidders come in for our street cleaning, snow plowing, and Brookville Road sidewalk shoveling. We interviewed and made a selection. Rolling Acres will be providing our service again this year. Their contract is in place. Tori's going to work with them in the near future about getting a street cleaning going since we haven't had one done.
Are we going to do the village? Repay them for what they
Since
did
we have
for us?
not, no.
So I talked to John Hyman about this. He wants to do the big street cleaning in December after the leaves have been taken care of. But
Okay.
he and I talked about how Quincy Street is filled with gravel and
Yeah.
needs it sooner. He will do that. We are also going to be checking all the catchment basins.
And we have had these done at 2 points in the past. So considering the fact that we have some streets that have, like, no one has touched them in a year, he
really?
might take a look and decide. Yeah, because we lost Mark Payton last
Oh,
fall.
right.
Now
in the middle,
and in the
right.
winter, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Because we've got some issues that are happening now that are only going to be exacerbated
Yeah.
by fall hitting us.
It's up to you guys.
And the last
well,
RFP.
I think you're suggesting is having John do a walkthrough or run through himself and see which streets might require more immediate action than before December. Is that what you're
I
saying?
mean, street cleaning?
Yes, street cleaning.
I know
How much
Quincy
is
needs
street
it
cleaning?
because we've gotten numerous.
We pay them
Yeah.
by the hour. I think it's $55 an hour. I think they should, since we've had to do this a couple of times in the fall in the past. It wasn't like a one-time
Right.
thing. I don't think there's a problem with us doing it now. I mean, literally, we've got streets with grass growing out of the middle of them to try and get that off the plate. Came up in the survey of street cleaning, so that we can say we've got a company in place. They did it one time,
And do
then
it
when
again in
fall
December.
washes us out, do it again.
At one point, it was being done quarterly, I think.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
pretty accurate,
know
yeah.
if it's necessary to do it
Yeah.
quarterly.
Yeah.
One of the reasons doing it before the winter is so you don't get
Right.
water buildup and ice.
Well, and he's interested in not plowing leaves.
Right.
Right,
He
yeah,
definitely wants
yeah.
it to be.
So if he's open to doing it twice, which I think sounds like there's pretty good
Are we
consensus to do.
going
I'm sure he's
ahead
willing to do it if it's up to you guys.
with sidewalk?
I would need to give her, we're doing sidewalk shoveling on Brookville Road. We did not bid sidewalk shoveling throughout the village. That is going to take some time.
Did he
and
give
research.
a separate?
It's an hourly rate.
Hourly?
It's an hourly rate. He does.
In the past, when that was done, it was very expensive. I don't know who.
It's an hourly rate, and he does not have, in my recollection, he doesn't have a
Snow blower.
push snow blower.
Which he didn't think would work anyway because of the, because of the snow that's pushed up.
From the street, from the
And
plows.
from the snow plows.
But if we did it in the residences, there might be an argument that a snow blower would significantly cut down on the expense
Right.
of a service provider doing it for elderly or disabled residents.
Yeah.
Well, let's not, it's 10:30.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
The last time we spent money on shoveling sidewalks was $80,000.
Yes.
It was a very snowy winter there.
Yes.
So, Mr.
that may have been.
Mr. Chairman, you have
Can
to
we have,
adjourn the meeting.
can we have a motion to adjourn or meeting adjourned? Let's go home.
I missed the bus.
Everybody missed the bus tonight. There were no, I'm sorry, except Susan.
Wait a minute.
Susan, and we swore Susan in before she started.
And then we gave her the oath, too.
Right.
Oh, so you took the oath tonight?
You swear?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
good.
you're a notary now.
And I got it right.
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Love that. Good job. Way to add that to your list of.
Well, I've always been a notary.
I bother
I was
for
expired.
water? Or do you have to have
okay.
Because no one ever.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, that's why
I'm sorry.
It's not just
Nobody gets
veterans.
what?
No, it's anybody that,
I thought I had one
I'll
along
just
with
put
me.
more on the table.
yes.
So I have not re-looked at the code since we had our last discussion.
You don't know by heart?
No.
Tonight's discussion should be pretty quick. We're only going to cover those 4 topics.
That were in
There's
the,
only 25
There's
minutes,
nothing
and we all
else.
remember how the last discussion
That's right. But is there
was only
nothing?
10 minutes.
We'll be quick.
Is there nothing else that we need to go over that
Just
we
this-
missed?
No, just the staff recommendations.
That's fantastic.
Well, we're early. Oh, that clock is pretty near correct.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Yep.
It's 2 minutes back.
If he says outside in the back.
We also have this here.
It depends on where he's most comfortable with it.
Katya, if you look at the book, in the back of that book, they tell you who the censor was. Who approved it. They tell you the number of the, they don't call him the censor, whoever approved it for publication. But made sure there wasn't any anti-Soviet.
Were you digging around in your office today?
What's that?
You're digging around in your office for
Well,
Soviet
there
war?
was just stuff on the bookshelf, and I couldn't see what it was. And I was pulling stuff out. And I said, oh, this will be great.
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't it say?
No.
It says the tirage, kind of how many were printed.
But that's standard. How
Yeah. But I thought there's usually a number, like a serial, an ID number of a person.
Of course.
I thought it did. Oh,
Bridge
okay.
too.
Doesn't say it was printed in the Red October plant.
Yes, that it does. Yes.
The Red October.
Yeah.
Trust the October.
Did you get the very minor? I did.
Well, I have to say,
Nice to see you.
we had a lot of people
Yeah, I like the perspective.
at our pre-meeting. We had at least 20 people. No, it was really good.
I'm actually
Did you get a
sure.
copy?
I know what you're talking about. Let's see.
Tori, did you get a copy of the street light?
Yes, thank you.
Tiffany, when you said, we had 25 meeting at this tree meeting, didn't we? All the rows of seats were filled.
Sure. Do you remember what the
How did that go?
edits were?
How did it go?
Very well. There was
I
one
said that about content
person
and
who
agenda.
said, keep your hands off my property. but he hadn't read the proposals carefully. But everyone else wanted to go further than we had proposed in various ways. So,
I think we're going to start.
okay.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is swearing in Susan Fadig, our new council member. But we did that earlier, actually, when we were doing the briefing to bring her up to date. So, congratulations and welcome.
Welcome.
I also would like to recognize Ted Stoddard, who has been coming to these meetings, but has also served for years for us on the elections committee. And I don't think that you nor Frank have been properly thanked by this council or committee, the village, for all of the time and work you put in. But thank you very much. Yes. So with that, we open it to the floor for comments. Any resident comments?
And the meeting is being recorded.
Great, so please state your name and where you live.
Josh Bowers from Summit Avenue. Last week, the tree committee met and made a presentation to the community. And I shared with the community on some data that we had on teardowns in the village. I believe the council has received these documents